Travel nightmares. The destinations people avoided for the rest of their lives. Manila. I loved the other places I went to in the Philippines, but Manila was awful. The air quality, the traffic, the garbage, and the weird proliferation of air-conditioned shopping malls. Most of all, the child poverty was heart-wrenching. A good wake-up call for a privileged Westerner, but not one I want again. You know why they charge you $20 to leave the Manila airport? Because they don't know you'd pay $50. Pueblo, Colorado. It's perpetually a Tuesday in 1988 there. Every day. My best friend lives there and says it's probably one of the most boring places he's ever lived. He's from Oklahoma like I am, so that's saying something. United Arab Emirates. Why anyone ever decided to start a city where it's 120 degrees is beyond me. Very underwhelming experience in Dubai. It's just another Las Vegas, but nobody is having fun. Probably the Hollywood Boulevard bit in LA. It's not interesting and it's frickin' busy. I came here just to search the answers for my good old hometown of Gary, Indiana. Yep, every time. Hobbema, Alabama. This place had such a bad reputation they changed the name 2 years ago. It's obviously not fooling anyone, guys. Freeport, Bahamas. The beaches were very dirty and I just felt like I was in a shipyard. They've also got a problem with feral dogs. They were everywhere. It broke my heart to see the skin and bone dogs. I guess so many of them starve to death that they can't keep up with the body pickups. I saw too many decaying dogs to count. Seriously, I'd never go back. Although I didn't enjoy going to Freeport, it made me realize how nice I have it here in the US. Another reason I didn't care for my trip was due to the fact that I was out there vacationing, sipping on martinis, while the locals were struggling to put food on the table. I saw where they lived and it really broke my heart. I felt very guilty knowing that my tourist butt wasn't assisting them in any real way. I'm not familiar with Bahamian tax laws and government-issued programs, but I can't imagine that the tourist money goes back to the people if that makes sense. And I also really started upping my volunteer game, especially with the Humane Society after that trip. A holiday location so bad that it changes a person's outlook and makes them more of a philanthropist is a really damning indictment of how blatantly unashamed they are for how badly they treat their citizens. Good on you, author. Belize City. Belize was one of our stops for the cruise we were on. I always heard about how gorgeous Belize was, and I'm sure there are beautiful parts of Belize, but Belize City was an absolute crap hole. They pretty much dropped a majority of white US citizens off and thought it would be okay to let us roam a city that was being torn apart by the local civil war. The city was full of armed military guards standing at street corners, and the city canals and streets were incredibly polluted. I live in Baltimore and I've seen some bad neighborhoods, but Belize City seemed way worse than anything I've seen. Many stores had armed guards who'd unlock the door to let you in, and once you were inside, they'd lock the door behind you. We didn't experience any issues with the crime or violence, but it was the strangest feeling getting stared down from every angle. We stayed for about an hour and then decided it was time to get the F out. As we were leaving, there were 3 people standing near the port. They looked at us and said, "Welcome to the real world." Once we got back to the ship, we strolled past the lobby, and there may have been 4 or 5 employees working the customer service desk. Each of them had a deep line, and the chatter was all centered around angry complaints about dropping us off at Belize City. Needless to say, that same cruise line took Belize off their itinerary soon after. Somalia. I went there when I was in the Navy, and I spent some time on shore looking at pits full of corpses and kids with automatic weapons. Screw that place. Greyhound bus station in Atlanta. I've never seen such an array of terrifying things happen in one small space. That place is a nightmare. A quandary. Are Greyhound stations located in the ghetto of each city, or does their presence create one? Nobody's quite sure. It's like asking if chicken or the egg came first. My answer is actually the bus itself on my bus tour. It was the most frustrating travel experience of my life. Want to see something? Too bad, get back on the bus. Are you done seeing something? Too bad, wait on the bus. And here is the magnificent Yosemite National… Get the frick back on the bus, we're on a timetable, folks. My god, it was so infuriating. Frickin' Gary, Indiana. Came off the exit immediately into a neighborhood that just looked like it was hit with some natural disaster before and never recovered. But no, they're just too broke to fix their roads or anything. We tried to cut through the neighborhood as fast as possible, but the potholes made us not go over 25. We finally got to a gas station and the guy at the register said, "Yeah, you all should get out soon. It's about the time when they start robbing people." Got the F out of there. Lapa, Rio de Janeiro. Pickpocketers run that place. I saw one of my buddies get picked, and I confronted the pickpocketer in hopes of getting his stuff back. They proceeded to kick my butt. Just skip it. Brazilian here. The city is incredibly dangerous. If you want to avoid getting mugged, don't wear what you normally do. Basic t-shirt, old tennis shoes, and some jeans will do you fine. Don't ever confront a criminal there for your own safety. Just hand it all over. Oh, and when you're stopped in traffic, the windows should be going up. In Salvador, I got mugged by a kid with a knife pretending to wash windshields. Some other guy just walked right past us while he had the knife in my face and did nothing. I know Portuguese, so I asked the kid if he wanted dollars or reais. Threw him off. He said dollars. Little did he know that I only had $40, but way more in reais. Gave him the dollars and he was off. I don't imagine anyone has spent time in Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea. It has the dubious honor of being in the world's top 5 most dangerous cities. Plus, the murders that happen there are generally way more random than hellish substance-infused places like Honduras or Guatemala. Port Moresby is interesting as well, since there's a high probability that not only will you be killed mercilessly, but you'll be eaten as well. I spent a week there one time. Pattaya, Thailand. Basically the working girl tourism capital of Thailand. My aunt is Thai and took my friend and I there because we said we wanted to go to the beach. Once we arrived, we planned a trip to a nearby island because that beach was not what we had in mind. Ah, Dubai. It's Vegas without the debauchery. The hotter parts of Arizona. I swear that state's population is going to hit 0 if there's a large solar flare or an EMP. Baking dashboard cookies has become a popular pastime here. I've also seen people grill steaks on the asphalt. Send help, please. Zimbabwe. Went there to see Victoria Falls. Stayed at the Victoria Falls Hotel to be within walking distance. Everywhere, people were just standing around with just 2 or 3 carved trinkets they were trying to sell. There were absolutely no buyers. Looked like something out of the Twilight Zone show. First thing they asked you when you got close to them is if you would sell them your shoes. No kidding. Every single one. The shoes are actually more of a status symbol in some African countries than a Rolex or a Benz are to us. Your shoes as a rich first-world person, despite the fact that they're being used before, are worth quite a lot on a local market or can increase the social status of the new wearer. Now for you, they're used shoes. Trash, literally speaking, so he expects you to sell them for a good price or maybe even take pity on a poor soul and gift them to him. All in all, not the worst business model I know, and relying on first-worlders' pity appears to work. Dubai. I thought it would be fun to see all the skyscrapers and supercars. I got tired of it in 5 minutes. East St. Louis. I was meeting a colleague for dinner at a Mexican restaurant in a not terrible part of East St. Louis. Unfortunately, Apple Maps took me into a desolate neighborhood with gigantic potholes in the streets and empty parking lots, interspersed with abandoned houses on either side. Thankfully, it was a 90-degree Fahrenheit July afternoon and nobody was out and about. I stopped in the middle of one street, looked around, saw nobody, and entered the same address into Google Maps. This time, it actually took me to the restaurant. You almost got effed up. Never stop in ESL? What the hell were you thinking? This video is not sponsored by Apple Maps. That comment was written in 2017, and frankly, I'm appalled that even back then, anyone was using Apple Maps. I know we all hate how much we rely on Google, but frankly, don't we need reliable maps? More damning indictments of East St. Louis to follow. Had to drive through East St. Louis on a choir trip one time. Probably one of the most depressing places I've ever been. Boarded up, abandoned buildings everywhere, confused-looking people walking around, and the kicker was that almost every yard had these signs with, "We must stop killing each other" on the front and "We must start loving each other" on the back. A very sad place. Yakima, Washington. They might call it the Palm Springs of Washington or Yucky Vegas, but it's an absolute crap hole. Highest rate of carjacking in the country and rife with violent crime. I had a friend that went there for a soccer match when he was in high school, and the match was cancelled because one of the kids on the other team was a gang member and some idiots drove by and shot at the players on the field. Luckily, nobody was hurt, but it gives you an idea of what sort of special crap hole Yakima is. That said, the Yakima Valley makes some amazing fruit and hops. If you've ever had a Washington apple or a craft beer from anywhere in the US, there's a very high chance that the apple or the hops came from Yakima Valley. I was almost held hostage by a cab driver that gave us a tour of Mauritius. It was our last day, and the F word kept forcing us to go to these really weird places that were apparently exclusive. We made it plenty clear we had no interest in going to them, but he said he had to go as he got a kickback and he kept taking us. My girlfriend was just crying and crying. The airport of Moscow. Boy, that place was bad. The bathroom smelled like smoke everywhere, staff were unfriendly, and the gates changed all the time. Maybe it was just a bad day, but jeez, that place was unorganized. Definitely the United Arab Emirates, in particular Dubai. While flying home from a business trip about a year ago, I was pulled aside at security, forced to remove all my clothing, given a ridiculously intimate and degrading strip search, including bending and spreading and having to retract my weenie's skin, being forced to stand undressed while my belongings were searched and my tattoos were photographed, and then I was interrogated for over an hour while they looked through my phone, computer, and other belongings. I missed my flight and wasn't even given a reason for the search. Luckily, I haven't been back, and I never will be. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? Apparently, Gary, Indiana is worth a video all by itself in terms of armpits to live in. I drove through it once and I was instantly depressed. Will hopefully never return. Weirton, West Virginia is the same way. I went there for work a few times. It was an old, mostly abandoned steel town. It was a happening place 30+ years ago, and now it's all run down and grey and cloudy almost every day. I'd drive the 25 minutes to stay in Robinson in nearby Pittsburgh just so that I didn't have to stay there overnight again. Our department literally had rules regarding how long you were allowed to work at that plant before you had to come back or go somewhere else. We lost a couple of good engineers to that place. Daytona Beach. I'm not exactly sure why after a 9-month deployment I chose to go there. Never again. Syria. I hitchhiked from Alexandria to Istanbul, through Jordan and Syria before the Arab Spring. Syria was beautiful and a historically fascinating country, naturally fertile and prosperous, with delicious food and friendly people. But it was backward, close-minded, poor, and seedy because of a corrupt, paranoid authoritarian government. Now it's a war zone and a humanitarian disaster, which is far, far worse. Well, I've currently been stuck in the Newark airport for 7 hours, and I'd be perfectly happy if I never had to come here again. Update. Just landed. Total wait time to take off was 11 hours. They forced me to check my bag and then texted me that they lost it, and then it showed up again at the terminal after all. F New Jersey. F United. Thank you all for your support. Did I mention they sent me to Dulles instead of Reagan, so now I have to somehow get to the other side of Washington to get to my car? Ugh. Khajuraho, India. It's most famous for its intricately sculpted temples, some of which depict very intimate acts. I traveled through India alone for months, and as an obviously foreign woman, I got the very expected unwanted attention. But Khajuraho was different. It was non-stop everywhere I went, and the men always became aggressive when I ignored or politely declined their advances. I was having such a horrible time that I decided to just go back to the hotel, where a man in the lobby wanted to have dinner with me, and I again declined. The lady at the desk must have given him my room number, because he called my phone until I disconnected it, and then started pounding on my door and telling me to let him in. It was truly horrible. I've gotten many responses to this comment, so I wanted to clarify that I had a wonderful time traveling solo in India in general. I met tons of lovely people, and I built some friendships that still last 4 years later. I'm from a culture where machismo is prevalent, and I know how to stand my ground and ignore or yell back. I learned some Hindi and did this a few times when I deemed it necessary. I don't sweat the small stuff. I also dressed conservatively, usually a salwar kameez with long sleeves, and I traveled with people I met in guest houses if I was going too far off the beaten path. This one day in Khajuraho was just a higher level of intensity than I'd experienced before. I wouldn't, however, let this prevent me from traveling to India again, since I had a very positive experience overall. It's Dubai again. Long story short, I ended up unexpectedly spending 8 days there. Never been to a more vacuous, culture-deficient place. All it has is shopping and vast inequality and oppression of the poor. Oh, and it's hotter and sweatier than Satan's undercarriage. You know, unless I'm there to chase tornadoes, I never have another reason to ever go to Kansas again. It's just a paved cornfield and I had to drive the entire width of it. At least Iowa had wind turbines to look at. I'm from Kansas and you're correct. Flat and corn. Occasionally it'll be 45 degrees one day and 98 the next. Meteorologist's wet dream. Nightmare for the rest of us, though. There's one toilet in Cusco, Peru, that I totally defiled during a particularly nasty bout of food poisoning. Every time I started to clean up, the cramps returned and I had to put my bum back on the seat sharpish. It was like a hellish fusion of Sisyphus and the Augean stables, with added burning and shame. The horror. You know, I don't think we were meant to list such small, specific locales that we were personally responsible for the creation of, but you did make me laugh, so thank you for that. Marrakesh. This is a doozy, so get comfortable. I'd been twice with male friends, but the third time we went with a mixed crowd. We stayed together as a group through all of the holiday until the final day when the girls went out shopping in the markets on their own. We found them an hour later crying and shaking. One of the market sellers had been really aggressive with them, pulling them into his shop and physically holding them there until they bought something. Then he penned one girl against the wall, trying to get a kiss. He insisted it was part of his Berber tradition to try and kiss her, but eventually just settled to kiss her on the cheek while she was repulsed. And it gets worse. We reported this to the tourist police and they went absolutely nuts. They made us wait in the station while they found the market seller and dragged him out in front of us. The guy was crying buckets and collapsed on the floor in front of us. He begged us to forgive him, but the police stood behind us, grabbed our arms and said, "This is a very bad man. We need you to tell us you want to prosecute him. Don't waste our time." We were really intimidated by this, particularly as we don't speak French or Arabic, and the police were gripping onto us. We were genuinely scared they'd hold our passports and stop us going home. So then the police tell us this man is going to prison for 7 years for the crime, but we need to give a written statement. So we tell the full story to a man in an office and he writes it out in Arabic. We can't read this, but he tells us his translation, and it's completely wrong. According to the report, it was a serious attempted unspeakable act, and he pinned the girl down on the floor. We go back and forth trying to fix the statement for hours, but settling on the best we can do. They keep saying, the details aren't important. But those details were things like he forced me on the floor and put his hands all over my body, which didn't happen. They also took our passport details down. But wait, there's more. We now need to go to the main police station to report the crime, so they bundle us into a taxi, 6 people on the back seat, and we go to the main police station. It's an absolute crap hole. It looks like a massive derelict factory that was converted into a smack house. We get led to a room where the market seller is stood in a lineup with other men. He's still crying his eyes out and can barely stand, so the lineup is pretty pointless. There isn't any glass separating us. He's literally stood in front of us in the same room, which is really depressing for the girl that reported this. He's begging us to make this stop, but we're too scared to say something to the police. We have no idea where we are. The building is huge, trashed and empty, with like 5 policemen. The toilets were flooded and we didn't know where we were. Way out from the city center, and it was getting late. We eventually tell the police we were flying home tomorrow and they got real annoyed with us. They said we need to be at the courts tomorrow to stand in front of this man and accuse him of a crime in front of a public audience. But we can't because we'll be on a flight at that time. It now looks like things will work out. They say the man can't be prosecuted without the victim coming forward, which is a relief to us as we no longer want this. Remember, we're stuck in a strict foreign country, not speaking the language, and we're being pushed around by the police, whom are notoriously heavy-handed. They seem fed up at that point and drive us back to our hostel in a riot van. We fly home and we think it's all over. But wait, there's more. A month later, the doorbell rings. There's a Moroccan man stood there. He tells us Hassan is still in prison and he needs our help. The man has traveled miles across the country, he's here on a work visa, to ask us for help. Apparently, the market seller's lawyer gave the family our home address from the passport details so they could take us back to Marrakesh and tell the courts Hassan was innocent. We don't know if this is a scam or if the man is armed or anything, so we tell him to write us a letter and we'll respond only to that. A month passes and nothing more. Then the doorbell rings again and this time there's a French woman stood there. She tells us she's flown over from southern France as a friend of the family to beg us for help. Apparently she used to live in our city and she's staying with friends nearby. We arranged to meet in a cafe the next day. Turns out this is all true, really a very elaborate con. She shows us newspaper articles, the police report and websites. We see a clipping from a whole page of the Marrakesh Times, which describes the event as an unspeakable act attempt. The lady tells us that the other market sellers paid the police to put Hassan away because he was taking their business. We don't know if this is true. We refuse to go back to Marrakesh and go in front of the courts because we still don't know for certain if this is a con or what might happen to us. We wrote a statement and got it signed by a local policeman as a witness. In our statement, we say he did grab at the girl but nothing else happened and that the man is innocent of what he's being accused of. The French woman says that she knows Hassan and he would never grab at a woman, but obviously that isn't true. So the French woman leaves with our note and says she'll stay in contact to let us know if he gets out okay. She never wrote back to us, and we still don't know what happened and how much was true. We certainly won't be going back to Marrakesh, and we're left with bad memories. I think you did about as close to the right thing as was possible to do in that awful situation. Impossible to tell if the guy really was the victim of jealous neighbors without going back and potentially finding out that you were being set up by some sort of revenge scheme or law enforcement trap. It's terrifying. I'd be scared that connected people knew where I lived. Qatar. Modern-day slavery is not something I want to support in any way. It's the same as Dubai in the sense of being void of any real culture. I go for work every few months and I never look forward to it. Scunthorpe. Because, well, Scunthorpe. Bali. I've done my time and never again. If I wanted to hang around obnoxiously drunk Aussies, I'd go to Australia. God damn it, you guys. I came here to get insight for my future travels, and all I've learned is not to go to Gary, Indiana, or that bathroom you exploded in Cusco. Pickering, Ontario. I can't even really describe why, but if you've been, you know. Who the frick travels to Pickering? OG Minecrafters. What's your best memory from Minecraft? I used to play on a server called New Spawn. Every week, the spawn point would move to a random location in the world and would all build a new city at that spot. Some players would build pathways connecting to previous spawns or settlements to make it easier for people to find their old bases again. At one point, me and a few other players decided to go off on our own and build a secret underground city which we called Euskos, or the Underground Secret City of Secretness. We spent an entire day carving out a massive hollow chamber underground and then spent a few days settling in with powered lighting in the ceiling, trees, farms, houses, stuff like that. It was a beautiful city and it was our secret. Then the server shut down unexpectedly shortly after that, and I never found those guys again. Okay, late update. A friendly user has recreated New Spawn because of this comment. Wow! Running a server with my best friend, it was great until he joined an experienced build team and I started experimenting with making mods, so our playstyles kind of drifted apart. We ran for about 5 years. It kind of also shaped our futures. He's studying architecture and I'm in IT. Proof that video games are beneficial. I knew nothing about Minecraft at all, I'd only heard about it. My 5-year-old daughter wanted to try it, so I got it for her. I thought it was just a building game and I didn't know there were enemies and that you could die. That first hour of it getting dark and frantically trying to build walls, only to learn that they can spawn anywhere in the dark and were now inside my base, it was crazy. Building maps, uploading them, and having 1,000 or more people download them and leave nice comments. About 9 years ago, my best friend and I would race home from school just to play Minecraft together as much as we could. We didn't realize Skype was a thing, so we just called each other from our house phones and stayed up into the wee hours of the night. Our big thing was always making a public server that we ran together. They never worked out despite our best efforts. We made countless worlds where we built spawns, arenas, shops, and things like that. Then about 3 years ago, he was in a terrible vehicle accident and he passed away. His family gave me his old laptop as a present because they knew how much time we spent with each other over video games. Sometimes I boot up that old laptop, close all the pop-ups, open an old version of Minecraft, and just walk around those countless worlds we created together. Good times. So the narrator was one of the near OG players back in the mid to late 2000s when he read about this phenomenon in a PC gamer magazine. You know, back in the Stone Age when people read those. I took up Minecraft years before all of my friends and I urged them to play it with me. None of them believed me about it being good, but they all eventually jumped on board when it became a big thing. I'd say who's laughing now, except I literally won nothing from the turn of events and I still wish they'd played with me from the start. I don't play anymore. Playing on a server with my friends using Hamachi, the good old times. I get so nostalgic for the Minecraft music. Absolutely stunning. It makes me so nostalgic listening to it while reading the comments that are here. Credits to the composer and my fellow Redditor U/C418. My friends and I would constantly make new servers and just restart everything. There was one server that we lost that I always wish we could go back to. It was right after the NPC village update and we had one spawn on a mountain in the middle of some plains. It was sloped so that the road in the village went from the bottom perfectly up to the top, with all the buildings on the side of the mountain. It's like how you'd imagine someone who wanted to do that would make it. It was just so perfect, and my house was the blacksmith's house. I wish I could go back. So when I was 13 or so, I was very, very, very stupid. I would play on this prison server, which, if you don't know, is a server where the goal is to grind for resources, and that's it. All you get is basically bragging rights. So anyway, I started talking to a fellow player. We were on at the same time a lot and would talk using the in-game chat, and eventually we got on Skype, since to my knowledge Discord didn't exist, or at least people didn't use it like they do today. Surprise! The other player is a girl. Anyways, we got along really well for a while, and she asked me where I was from, and I said the Chicago suburbs. She said she was also from the Chicago suburbs. Turns out we were literally in the towns next to each other. One time, towards the end of my Minecraft playing career, my dad mentioned he was going to the grocery store that was on the border of the two towns, and he asked if I wanted to come. Obviously, I said yes, and got on Skype and asked her to meet me there. Basically, all that happened was we made eye contact and said nothing to each other. I wonder how she's doing. And that's the story of how I should have been kidnapped. I used to go on a pretty popular faction server with my friend, and it was pretty PvP. There were various cities, and each city had a mayor. We joined one of the biggest factions, and the mayor let us run a little shop. You couldn't fight or destroy other properties unless the mayor gave you the privilege to do so. We wanted to be peaceful, so we didn't invest much in weapons, plus TNT was banned, and anyone caught with it would be kicked out of the city. There was this one shopkeeper in the city called Bob. He was very quiet and barely talked to anyone, and he had the default Steve skin and just stood in his shop all day long, but always seemed to have everything. He hated other shops too, but never outright said it, but we found him snooping around the other places and following people when they went to gather resources, just so that he could sneak in and steal any resources that they hadn't mined yet. One day, though, the mayor accidentally deleted the faction, so the entire city basically went into wilderness territory. Instantly, it devolved into anarchy, and people started attacking each other and setting things on fire. My friend and I tried hiding in our shop and watching people being murdered on the street. We could hear TNT explosions too, and in the midst of the fighting, we saw Bob walking amongst the carnage with a block of TNT. Eventually, we got attacked and had to make a run for it with our most valuable stuff. I was low on health, being shot at by an archer, so I put up a few blocks of dirt as a shield while begging my friend to help me. Out of nowhere, I saw my friend, he had the Optimus Prime skin on too, run over to the archer and kill him with a block of dirt. We got his stuff, including the TNT, I guess he killed Bob, and we ran back to our shop, which is when the mayor finally restored the faction. Lots of stuff was destroyed, but our shop was intact. The guy we killed properly raged for his stuff back, but we kept refusing and started trolling him by saying stuff like, "Does anyone want to buy steel leg armor?" as well as selling the stuff we took off him. Eventually, the mayor came over and kept the peace by giving us better stuff in exchange for us giving the guy his stuff back. Lots of shops got destroyed and nobody knew who did it, but we knew. We knew it was Bob with TNT. I was pretty new to the game when this happened, way back around the time multiplayer was first added. Found a hole that a friend had dug straight down into a cave bottom that was basically out of view. Wanted to go down and set up a ladder, so to get safely down I started dropping sand and gravel down the hole to dig down afterwards. I spent a good while just dropping the blocks down and had to keep farming up more and more. I was shocked at how deep this hole must have been. No matter how many blocks I tossed down, the stack just didn't seem to be getting closer. Finally, I made a whoopsie, and when approaching the hole I forgot to hold shift and fell all the way down to my death. While laying there with my bones shattered, I noticed a large pile of loose sand and gravel all around me and the torch that I landed on. That's when I learned about the interactions with falling blocks and torches. I used to be an admin on a server when Minecraft was very popular. I'd been on this server for probably 2 years and worked my way up to admin. But shortly after a while building for the owner and getting tons of new players to join, I found out he was using donation money to buy substances and personal things, despite saying that all the money went back to the server. I confronted him about it and he basically said, "Yeah, I'm lying to the players, who cares?" He basically told me to go F myself, so I said, "Okay, sounds good man, good luck." The next day I world edited the spawn to crap and made people spawn over lava. I killed the server and overwrote his save, and killed the server immediately as I made my own server, bringing people over who were tired of said person. Was there a more mature way to do it? Probably, but 16-year-old me at the time didn't care. In my eyes, I was bringing him to justice and giving players a more active server that was cared about more than dirty money. It felt great. Making massive redstone-based farms so that I get more than like 100 carrots per harvest, and then storing them all in some massive chest storage system and making a crap ton of golden carrots from mining in the clay biome. I had so many golden carrots, I had to destroy a whole forest to have enough chests to keep them in. Have you tried Factorio and Satisfactory yet? I think you'd like them. Ooh, I know of both of these and I'm immensely tempted to try Factorio, especially since it's supposed to work well on the Steam Deck. However, I very much fear what would happen to my free time if I took it up. Minecraft was one of those black holes in my life that likely reduced some of my college letter grades, and I fear what a similar habit would do to my adult life. When I was in college, my long-distance boyfriend and I would play Minecraft together on the server. The one day I was working on our home base without him, another player came up to me and started throwing flowers at me. Then he asked me how old I was and I said 19. He said, "Me too, -8. It was adorable. There was this one time on one of my servers where I got annoyed because everybody on the server decided to start just murdering each other. Punishment? I locked down all of the stores and all of the buildings in the town, and they all just lost it and begged for me to make everything go back to normal. Me, being a little edgelord, forced the whole server to build an altar and sacrifice a sheep on it. But they had to kill the sheep with cooked mutton, then eat the sheep's raw mutton. Everyone was so confused and disturbed as I watched in the distance as they did their ritual. I basically made a Minecraft sheep cult that lasted for like 10 minutes. Creeper? Oh man. So way back in the mine. You know what? It was just an awesome way to bond with my kid at the time. We built all of these crazy worlds and had tons of fun. He's moved on to Fortnite and Roblox now, and it just isn't the same. A few years back, I and my friend built Helsinki in Minecraft Lite, then had to close the app. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Skyblock.net. This was years ago, like in the alpha. My friend was really into building cannons. He built his house on top of a tree with a cannon built into it with an observation deck on top. He'd been working on this cannon for a while. He calls us all over to watch him fire it off a few times. The first few shots go fine, it's pretty cool. Then on the next shot, he flicks the switches in the wrong order and it all blows up in the chamber. We're sitting on the observation deck, waiting to see some TNT fly off to the horizon. He yells something and we turn around and see that most of the house, barring the deck, is just gone. He'd blown his whole house up. It was terrible in the moment, but it's hilarious looking back. When I first ever started playing Minecraft, I joined a server from the website DIY.org. This was back in Minecraft 1.4, and everybody was just so nice to each other. Basically, people on there taught me how to play Minecraft, and no other server I've played on has been the same. I've got more stories from the server if anyone wants to hear them. It itself has been shut down for years, sadly. A couple of months ago, my brother and one of our friends set up a server for Minecraft 1.2.1, and it was just so nice and simple to play in that version. For a while, we weren't talking because we were too busy doing whatever, and then my brother fell down a hole, turned around and screamed so loudly and scared, "Oh God, a creeper!" And it was just so funny, we were all in tears from laughing. I am so glad that I can share this story. My big brother has a friend, and they're still friends by the way. This guy made Minecraft servers. It was like a new server once a month or so, and of course I played on it as well. Since my big brother and his friend were on good terms, he became a co-owner. This is important later. This server in particular, it was like a survival server, but also a bit economical as well. A big city in the spawn, but free land outside of it. I built a house out there, and I was quite proud of it. Several days later, I got griefed, and a stone house appeared near my house, so I griefed his house in revenge. But the following day, the majority of my house was gone and more houses appeared next to mine. I went to tell my big brother that I'd been griefed, and he gave them my revenge, stealing all of their stuff and putting their houses in lava, which only admins can do. It made me so happy when he did that. You're a great brother. When I first started playing before 1.0 was released, I'd play with my brother and my dad. We built a wall of China around our base and followed Palsaurus or Minecraft Dad's videos. He was an amazing guy and fueled my passion for the game. The most nostalgic memories were all mining for coal together since we ran out so often, and repairing creeper holes on our football field since it was poorly lit due to said lack of coal. I remember when I first saw the Temple of Notch or whatever it was called, and I was bamboozled for like 3 days straight thinking about how it works. I never realized it until I'd thought about it recently and realized it's just redstone circuits. Me destroying my friend's nether portal with my fists while he was inside. He never found out it was me, as our entire class had our own server, and like 6 people were online. But he was so mad and demanded some other guy to make his portal again, just so that he could get back to the overworld. In Minecraft Creative Mode, I used to construct a bunch of things by myself or with friends. From schools to cities to anything really. I wouldn't really do much with friends in survival or really remember me playing survival mode. Not in the game itself, but the original Minecraft handbooks. The green, red, blue, and maroon ones. They were the best. I loved sneaking into my sister's Minecraft world via LAN with an edgy hacker nickname and do nothing but steal her wheat and throw her wheat into the lava. Yep, just the crops, nothing more, nothing less. To this day, she still thinks she was getting hacked by strangers. Back in the mid-2010s, I got to finally create my own account as a birthday present because I was using my friend's account for about a year. I used my mum's phone to set up the account and spent about a good half an hour thinking of a username for it because I wanted to make sure it was a cool-sounding one. When I got home, I remember going straight on the Hive server, or whatever it was called, and waiting in a lobby where some random person came up and told me, "Cool username," and I'll never forget that. I had a group of friends that would go on Skype together and play Minecraft in the same world. I was never too into Minecraft, but I'd play it sometimes. One time, they invited me into their Skype group and I joined the world. They had a whole town going on with roads and buildings. It was pretty impressive. I thought it would be hilarious for one of them to come back to their huge home filled with TNT. The problem was that when I was almost finished, I accidentally clicked one of the TNT crates. I don't know if the TNT explosion stacks if you put more together, but this explosion was massive. It put a huge frickin' crater right in the middle of their town. I immediately got kicked from the Skype call and the world. I had to message them all over Facebook Message and convince them how sorry I was and that it was an accident. An hour later, we were laughing about it and rebuilding half the town. I still remember the oh crap feeling when I saw that TNT box start blinking. I don't know that there was anyone on creative mode who didn't do this at some point. Most people had some sort of TNT building that they made an integral part of the center of their base, for reasons that I just can't fathom. Boy, all of this is taking me back. As a side note, it will be interesting to see how well a video about old-school Minecraft does in 2025. YOLO! There was a popular server called Hypixel, and on there they had a game mode where you could have your own plot and build whatever you wanted, but you had to unlock blocks rather than having them all immediately. Most people built parkours, but I built something that nobody had, which was a massive building with levels where you had to find a small item in a bumpy terrain. There were 5, I think, floors with around 20 levels in each, and they had different themes and items to find, and the 5th floor had 4 large rooms of each of those themes, and they were very difficult. I remember seeing people scavenging around the place, people working together and such. It was very popular. It spent weeks as the #1, and I remember going on every day and people piling in. It was definitely my best memory from Minecraft. I remember playing Minecraft with my older brother. We killed the Ender Dragon in 3 days, and we played 2 days from 8 PM to 8 AM. Making creative stuff on creative servers and letting people see it and say, wow. I have so many that it's hard to pick just one, but just about a year or 2 ago, my friends and I had a rise and fall of communism in our world. Not really a best memory, but the one memory I can never forget from Minecraft has to be the peaceful music. Logging back on after 5 years, going back onto 2B2T, which is an anarchy server with no server resets, and I found myself back in the huge base that me and a friend from a server had built. We'd built a wall where we'd log the last time we were active, and I went to update my sign. I found that not only his sign had been updated, but a number of other players had found the wall, some within the last 6 months, and they'd written down their names and dates too. The base was largely intact, and the thought of something that was so big in my childhood still being untouched really hit me. I used to be around top 100 in Quakecraft on Hypixel, so trying to get that and meeting all of the regular players was fun. I made a lot of friends like that. A server I used to play on way back when pretty much all of the commands were via plugins. It was a survival server, but if you were trusted enough, the admins would give you permanent creative access, with the understanding that you'd be building stuff for the community to enjoy and helping the other players out. 3 things really stood out to me. First, building a water-cooled TNT cannon so powerful that just firing it crashed the server. After much trial and error, we got the payload to a safe level and tried again. Launched a newbie to something like X-400,000, and the sheer volume of simultaneous mapping caused a RAM bleed. I was politely asked not to do that again. We also built a series of small, identical Greek-looking temples dotted all over the server, dedicated to Lolgutyu. Each shrine had the same thing inside: a raised dais, a stone button, and a sign telling players not to push the button or they'd die and probably lose their stuff. It wasn't a joke. If you pushed the button, you'd die. I made each shrine's method a little different. One peppered you with flaming arrows, one smushed you into the ceiling, one pushed you down a pit and threw an anvil after you. It was basically dumb ways to die as told by LEGO. I very quickly racked up a lot of complaints. The other builders and admins thought that I went too far. The owner thought it was hilarious and added in a quick script that announced "LOL got you" server-wide whenever somebody ignored the warning and pushed the doom button. Then, finally, we had a YouTube griefer rock up when there were no admins around. We figured they'd been scoping the server out with an ult beforehand, and they'd start causing trouble. They couldn't do much harm to the server town because of building permissions, haha, but they had a hack client or some kind of exploit that let them kill players in the PvP disabled areas. Confronted them with just a simple wooden sword and established very quickly that I was in fact unkillable, but they still took damage. A few minutes of coordinating with the other creatives later, and were dealt out a little frontier justice. The griefer had /set home just out of the way of the main spawn, and by getting 2 of our builders to constantly chain kill the guy, we effectively locked them in place while I built a 3x3x4 bedrock capsule directly around their spawning coordinates. Once safely trapped, we added some embellishments, including a sign reading "Beware of Virgin, safely trapped," and a double chest full of eggs nearby for Hucken. There was a constant stream of foul language and personal attacks from our prisoner, so we also added a single bucket of lava at foot level, so they were more or less muted. When the owner found out what we'd done, he made the 3 of us full admins. Haha! What's a thing that a teenager can do now to help them out once they turn 18? The sooner you get a good routine, the better. So I'd say learn to take care of your teeth and don't forget to floss. It's easy to look over flossing and not do it, but it's so important and future you will thank you. Traffic rules. Please take them the frick seriously. Most of us drive like idiots until our first major accident, and you'd better pray it's not curtains for you when that happens. Don't drive like a 12-year-old playing GTA 5, don't drive if you're drinking, and wear your fricking seatbelt. Wear it. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, but don't risk mistakes that will severely compromise the rest of your life. What I see across cultures and countries is an enormous pressure to be perfect, so high that nobody can possibly ever meet the pressure. So people make mistakes, as they should, but the problem is that the pressure to be perfect makes all mistakes seem the same. Risk losing some money, risk making relationship mistakes, risk losing friends, risk losing a year. Those things are fine. Don't risk 6 figures of debt, which means students without a degree or a good major or a good GPA to show for it. College is a great investment if you also put the time and effort in to succeed. You shouldn't risk disease, don't risk death, don't risk pregnancy, don't risk substance addiction. Do not risk a felony conviction. Take the kinds of risks your 25-year-old self will laugh about. Don't take the kind of risks your 25-year-old self will curse you for saddling them with. Be social, but remember friends will come and go. Don't invest in people that won't invest in you. Get ready for your friends circle to shrink by half or more. And that's okay because your adult friends will hopefully be much healthier and happier for you than your teenage friends. Smoking. I started with cigs so that I could take breaks from work in construction. I'm 27 now and I can't quit vaping. This sucks. Honestly, Color the Narrator surprised that people in 2018 were getting onto cigarettes rather than straight up starting with vapes in the first place. Kind of thought society shifted off the old tobacco. Then again, it is a massive industry and it's probably pulled literally every stunt possible to keep its manipulative, financially bloated, and exploitative self going by any means necessary. Learn some basic cooking. Learn how to wash clothes, hang them up, do ironing. You might be moving out soon, so practice the skills you'll need. Imagine all of the things you'd have to do if mum and dad weren't around and start practicing them. Draw up a budget. Look at how much to rent in the place you want to live. Add in food and electricity and mobile phone and internet. Don't forget to add bond too. Taxes. How to vote. How to write emails. I've had to teach several first years at my university how to do these. I get a lot of emails from customers at work. Trust me, plenty of people well over 30 don't know how to write emails. Some email tips off the top of my head. First, tone. Be polite, use proper grammar, sentence structure, and capitalization. Word choice. I sometimes get emails that use slang terms or acronyms that I've never heard of, and I have to look up. Industry-specific terminology and acronyms are fine, though, as long as the audience for your email would reasonably be aware of them. Formatting. Effectively using bullet points, bolds or italics, hyperlinks. Those things can improve email communication by a lot. And questions. If possible, try to keep emails to a single question. That's not always possible, but if you have an important question that you need answered in an hour, and a trivial question that doesn't have a deadline, it's better to ask the first question and save the trivial one for another time. If there are 3 questions buried in 6 or 7 paragraphs, I'm more likely to miss them than if you ask them at the same time in a numbered list at the bottom. Some people prefer to ask their questions in line and just bold them. Not my preference, but it's much better than a hidden question mark. Oh, and use question marks when you ask a question. Listen to your desires and dreams. I'm 28. My goals and dreams now are vastly different than when I was 18. Listen to those changes. For a long time, I kept chasing a dream almost because I felt I owed it to my younger self. It's okay for your dreams to age as you age and your circumstances change. Who you are now will not be the same person you are at 23. And as you grow, listen to your internal monologue. Dreams and desires change. Grow with them. Piggybacking off of this, make sure there are some hobbies you really enjoy, and preferably some which you can do alone or at home. Don't rely on other people for entertainment. Taking care of your physical and mental health before you fall into the trap of, I don't have time for that. Really sit down and think about how you can better yourself for your own sake. Authorized user is a sort of cheat code in the credit world. If your parents have decent credit and take care of that crap, see if they make you an AU on a card and then lock the card up in a box. Being AU makes the credit history of the account show up on your credit report. If financial responsibility is a big deal in your house, this can have some major advantages when you're trying to get started. Yep, it's totally a cheat code, but it does work. I'm 30 and my credit history is 22 years according to my credit report. I remember my mom telling me that she was going to do this, but I didn't really understand what it meant. Thanks, Mom. Don't ask your parents to do this if they have bad credit, though. That'll just weigh you down. Remember that at 18, you're now risking real jail time. Relationships. As soon as you hit 18, things start becoming real. Don't get married without being sure of your future spouse. Don't go unprotected doing the deed. Don't get into a relationship where your other half will get you in trouble with the law. Your data trail online. Old Instagram and Facebook posts can come back and haunt you during future interviews. Do a spring clean and nuke everything. In some jurisdictions, Europe, maybe California, you can have things purged under privacy laws. Learn how to take care of yourself. Take full responsibility for everything that's happening in your life. Create big goals and have a life purpose if you have one. Focus on saving money and don't buy stupid crap to impress people who you don't even like. A big thing you should learn, along with having goals and a purpose, is to be flexible. Stuff happens sometimes, and you've got to know it's okay for plans to change. I'm 17 and I'll be turning 18 later this year, so I look forward to reading these responses. Don't be afraid to walk away from a job or person that's toxic. Start saving now so that you can walk away. Community college is your best friend. Go there before doing the last 2 years at 4th year. Trade schools are just as viable. There's no shame in being debt-free at 22 making 60K. And 3 to 5% of all income should go to retirement starting now. Go open a Roth 401k. Getting your crap together. 18 is not the age you should be thinking you're a full-blown adult. No, you need to go venture into the 20s for that. But between 18 and 21, you just gotta get your crap together. no matter what it is. Financial, mental, physical, just do whatever it takes to make sure you can fully prosper from stressed-out teen to battle-hardened grown-up. I was going to say something along those lines, like work on being self-aware or self-reflection. As ashamed as I am to admit it, I was very resentful when I joined the adult working world. Everything that wasn't going right for me was because of external factors holding me back. That was simply not true, or at least it was exaggerated. That mindset gets you nowhere quickly. I'd say that a lot of these really good suggestions other people have on here could be solved by starting with someone who developed a good self-awareness of how they're acting or thinking about stuff coming up in their life. 18-year-olds will get that brutal dose of reality sooner or later. What's critical is how they react to that initial challenge. If you can avoid passing the blame, regardless of whether it's within your control or not, it will begin a slow trend towards taking ownership of all aspects of your life. Develop healthy habits now. Proper nutrition, a steady sleep schedule, regular exercise, stuff like that. You are in a fantastic position to build a healthy lifestyle that will elevate your quality of life for the rest of it. It is much, much harder to change existing unhealthy habits that have been established for years. Most people aren't able to. Give yourself the best chance for a lifetime of health and happiness now. The first few years of your early 20s will fly, and then one day you'll wake up and be like, I'm 25? I'm halfway to 50. Oh boy, the narrator remembers his quarter-life crisis, sitting in a bar with friends and a 1,000-yard stare a few days before I turned 25. And then I kept on behaving like a teenager for another few years, so honestly, maybe my crisis should have shaken me more to make me get my act together. Learn how to learn. Most of us had no idea how to do taxes, get a mortgage, vote, fix a broken electrical socket. You just need to know where to go to learn things, and I think the younger generations are already exceptional at finding information. But there's a sort of learned helplessness some people have, especially those who didn't have to learn things while they lived at home, where if something seems confusing or hard, they just give up versus actually searching out more information. Sometimes YouTube is great. Sometimes you need to call an expert, and sometimes you need to take a class. For example, check Reddit personalfinance to see how many people post about not understanding their car loans or mortgages, or just give up on filing their taxes for years because, quote, it's hard. Just learn about things before you jump in. Your mental health. Don't set so many goals for yourself that the stress makes your mental health suffer. Take some time for yourself. Do nothing with it, just recharge, even if it's only a couple of hours a week. It gives you something to look forward to. Also, learn how to budget and save. Credit cards. Networking for job prospects. Seriously, just getting out and building a social network can help so much, especially if you're networking in the same field as you're going into. Read every document that you sign. You're now accountable for everything you put your name to. Careers that have lasting happiness, financial stability, and ways to move around in a field to prevent or in case of burnout. Not cooking is what I'm trying to say. Time management, finances, foregoing college, and working for a few years. They should really begin to try and understand why they're doing the things they're doing. Are you going to college because that's what your teachers and parents are saying you should do? Is it a practical choice? College can be good, but a lot of jobs you could have gotten with a degree, you can get without one. You may just end up robbing your future self for a delayed adolescence. If you're plagued with debt and existential dread, please consider these at the bare minimum. Clean your teeth twice a day with a soft or extra soft brush, and fluoride toothpaste. Hard brushes are inefficient in cleaning small crevices and are prone to sanding away your enamel. Floss as well. Apply physical sunscreens containing titanium or zinc oxide for any amount of sun exposure. Chemical sunscreens are effective, but they'll cause tanning and pose a higher risk of free radical damage. Keep hydrated by leaving full water bottles around your desk or workspace. Turn it into a routine rather than an exception. Incorporate legumes, whole grains, and vegetables into your diet. Otherwise, the constipation will force you to spend more time on the loo and lend a higher risk of backside prolapse, hemorrhaging, or other declines in the quality of your life. And get those Zeds in, bro. Chronic sleep deprivation will shorten your life expectancy and predispose you to depression and anxiety. And hug your heckin' pet for that free oxytocin. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I'd say, personally, student loans. Don't major in a field where your student loans will equal twice as much as your starting salary. Medical and law may be exempt. And to add some more general advice, don't believe bullcrap about lucrative fields and careers of the future or stuff like that. Hard subject does not equal good-paying job, especially STEM field. I know people with degrees in chemistry, physics, and genetics, and they're either barely getting by or they've switched careers to IT or finance with flavors of IT. Also, if you want to work in quantitative finance, be one of those quants. Don't get a degree in finance. Get a degree in math or physics and learn to code. Those fields almost exclusively hire people with STEM degrees with a large math component, so no biochemistry or genetics like me. Interestingly, some people with a history of arts degrees also end up in IT. And if your parents tell you astrophysics is not a good field, tell them to get effed. It's the best way to get into a lucrative quant job. Roth IRA, and contribute to your 401k if your job has one. Many employers match up to a certain amount. Does your job offer a pension? Pretend that pension doesn't exist, because a frighteningly large amount of them are underfunded. Start an IRA instead. Getting a job and a driver's license if you don't have one already. Surely when you're just turning 18, it'll be cheaper and easier to rely on public transport, at least for uni years. Oh, alright, I get it. America doesn't have public transport. Being a YouTuber is not a career, and it's not for everyone. It should be a hobby well before it can be considered a career. It's very rare that you reach a level of success where that's an option. Decide if college is actually for you. There are many jobs that are going to be automated in your lifetime. Jobs that will be the last to automate are labor jobs. Start a landscaping company, a pool cleaning company, a plumbing company, or like an AC or heater repair thing. Any kind of labor-type job. If you start young, you could have the potential to make $60K a year after only a couple of years without putting yourself into 40+ K in debt. Obviously, this route isn't for everyone, but don't sleep on it just because everyone up until this point has said you need to go to college. Politics. You're old enough to vote. Currently, the 65+ crowd dominates elections. They'll be dead soon. There are more of you than there are of them. It's your future. Don't buy into the turd sandwich versus giant D-bag apathy. Select the politicians you agree with. And pay attention to the local elections as much, if not more, than the national stage, especially in America. There's some sneaky, messed up crap that happens locally that will impact your life in ways that you just don't anticipate. Yep. Pay attention, look at the arguments from both sides of the divide, and look at specifically who has a road plan for your best interests at heart, and isn't just saying that they'll magically make things better. And look at who's the least in pocket of billionaires and foreign powers. Literally everything that happened to you in high school doesn't matter. Like sure, you've heard and likely dismissed that while you were going through it, but the sooner you accept it, the faster you'll start to act like an adult. Also, if you're a dude, 23 seems to be the year that everything goes to heck. But keep on and stuff will improve. I don't think this is good advice. You can get someone pregnant or you can get pregnant in high school. You can commit felonies where you'll be tried as an adult in high school. You'll get crappy grades that ruin your chance at finding good colleges and scholarships in high school. You can miss class so much that you have to retake a year. You can end up with a bad job reference in high school. There are all sorts of things you can do to ruin your life in high school. Learn how to use Excel or Google Sheets and make a budget. Live by it. Get a bank account. Get checks. Budget will help here for people who don't cash checks timely. Whatever extra money you have, if you do, divide it by 2. Save half and enjoy the other half. That will keep you from feeling burned out. Start saving money every paycheck. Learn how to frickin' cook. I know it's way more convenient to throw things in the microwave, but trust me. For your sanity, take a quality over quantity approach when it comes to feeding yourself. It's healthier and cheaper if you do it right at the cost of some time. And if you learn your way around spices and flavors, you'll be able to make restaurant-quality meals while wearing literally nothing but a bathrobe. If you smoke, stop now. Oh, thanks, I'm cured. That was so easy. Screw you, idiot. I'm turning 18 next month. I can 100% confirm that the class of 2020 all the way to at least class of 2026 is absolutely fricked from vaping. They will not stop. Since everyone's saying the obvious, I'll say an underrated thing. You need to focus on you. Try avoiding acne, getting fat, and finding your hair and fashion style. I mean, the first 2 things have a massive genetic component, but thanks anyway, I guess. Your social media profiles. More and more good-paying jobs are conditional upon a background check that involves social media research. More and more companies want to know who you are as a person to make sure you'll be a good personality fit for the company. Skills are only part of the picture. To better gauge this, invasive social media screening is done. The separation between personal life and professional life is quickly being eroded. Teachers get fired for their social media posts. You could be one party picture away from losing a $75K a year job to somebody else, even if that picture was taken a long time ago. Like you could be 22, graduating college, and a background check found something you posted 4 years ago that's being used against you. So start being careful about what you post online now, because in the future it might bite you in the butt real hard and you might not even realize it. You kids should be focusing on politics because it will affect your lives more. Yes, register to vote, learn about and engage in more than just presidential elections. One of the best things young adults can start to do is solidifying their values and distinguishing from their parents. So many young people are just an extension of their parents' beliefs. Learn for yourselves. This is one I'm not seeing a lot. Learn to talk. 20-year-old here. So many kids nowadays are so locked into their tech that they simply don't have proper communication skills or don't know how to act in a social setting. Practice conversing. Be comfortable talking to people. It will only benefit you tremendously. Even if you're an introvert, you should at least be able to hold on to like half of a conversation where it seems like you're engaged and committed. I can't tell you the amount of times I've gotten internships, bonuses, and the like, just because I knew how to have a human-to-human conversation. So many times at my age, going into interviews and stuff, just conversing with other candidates, it's shocking how little interactive social skills they actually have, because all they do is bury their heads into their phones with their wireless earbuds in, completely ignoring objective reality. Talk! Who's bullcrapping you? Who out there really has your back and is a straight shooter? When are you just getting a sales pitch? Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with being sold to, but know how to recognize when you're just buying hype and buzzwords. Take note of what you consider a joke. I've noticed on Reddit it's common for people to say over and over again, "It's just a joke," or "It's just a meme, don't take it so seriously." But at the same time, why is it so many people here find jokes and memes about other people ending their existences, depression, low self-esteem, loneliness, mental instability, financial ruin, existential dread, and debt? So funny. Masking your insecurities and humor doesn't help you in the long run. Misery loves company. As you start out on your own, it's important to start saving as much money as you can and delay gratification. Don't just live paycheck to paycheck and buy every shiny bauble that you can. A rainy day fund is important, because sooner or later, it rains. Plus, you'll get older eventually and want to do things like buy a house or start a family. Hand washing. I feel like not enough kids are learning how to cook anymore. Chillingly accurate. This is especially frustrating when you consider the fact that finding a recipe is as simple as watching a YouTube video. That is interesting, isn't it? Unlike our folks, we really have the knowledge of how to cook anything we want at our fingertips. Maybe that's why we don't practice or write down recipes. And yet, even my older millennial generation feels like both guys and girls have a certain lack of any culinary skills, even up to their late 20s. Honestly, being able to do some basic stuff in the kitchen seems to impress some of my peers way more than it should. That 14-day free trial is coming to an end. Depends on the person, but responsibility over stuff and realizing this is the real world. If you're going into college and you're going to have to take out student loans, you have to think about your degree as an investment. This means you have to realistically evaluate the earning potential of your degree compared to how much in loans you're taking out. A classic example, a psychology bachelor's degree is infamous for being somewhat worthless in terms of earning potential on its own. In order to make money in psychology, you have to get a PhD as well. So if you take out $100K in loans for a psychology bachelor's degree by itself, that's not a good idea. My generation, I'm 36, grew up being told we could be whatever we wanted and to follow our dreams. Unfortunately, you have to be more grounded in reality than that. Don't go to college just because it's the default. Choose the best plan of action for your goals. Start putting a little money aside every week right now. How to do your taxes. I don't know why things like that aren't taught at school. The tax system, in the US anyways, is pretty damn complex. It's because it changes slightly every year. And it's because the schools don't want the liability. Finances. Just put 20% away. Pretend it doesn't exist. You need more money? Tough it out until you find a better job or get a raise. Sunscreen, moisturizer, investing, and mental health and mindfulness. Watch Graham Stephen on YouTube. He's a great financial YouTuber that gives good advice and he's not condescending about it either. Retirement accounts. Throw crumbs into them during your 20s and compound interest will do its magic, giving you a very comfortable retirement. What was the most fail excuse a restaurant customer had for sending back a meal? I was a server at the time. The dude ordered a pizza that had fresh jalapenos on it. They're cut lengthwise. When I gave it to him, he flipped out and asked why we'd put bell peppers on it. I told him those were jalapenos, but he wasn't having it. He walked right into our kitchen and told the chef he couldn't believe he didn't know the difference between bell peppers and jalapenos. The chef just took out a whole jalapeno and said, "This is a jalapeno, right?" The guest said, "Yeah." The chef cuts it as it appears on the pizza. "And that's what you have, right?" The guest, with a stunned look on his face, "Yeah." He left me an awful tip, by the way. Woman orders meal and asks there to be no salt, pepper, garlic, or any other herbs or spices in the meal. Then she sends it back because apparently it's flavorless. Where I work, people will often ask for their undercooked burgers to be remade. It's normally no big deal, but every once in a while you'll get a ridiculous customer. This one time, a customer came up to the counter and told us their burger was undercooked and demanded we recook it. Unfortunately, they decided not to tell us they were 3/4 done with the food. So, my manager happily obliged and had their burger remade. After it was finished, he cut the burger into fourths and gave the customer a fresh quarter burger, well done. The look on their face was justice. "Can I have this made with penne instead? I'm allergic to fettuccine." You're allergic to a shape? I worked at an Italian restaurant as a waitress for a short time as the customers sucked. This lady in her 40s ordered a Hawaiian pizza and pitched a fit, saying how we got her order wrong. I asked her what was wrong with it and she said it wasn't a Hawaiian pizza and the toppings were wrong. I looked at it and it had diced tomatoes, pineapples and ham, exactly what the menu stated. Showing her this, she said, "What are you talking about? Those are yellow. Pineapples are orange." Confused, I got my manager and he tried explaining that pineapples are in fact quite yellow, not orange. But if she didn't like it, she could order something else on the house. She got mad and said no. She wanted this, but with the right pineapples. She started explaining what they looked like and I said, "Wait, do you mean oranges?" As she was totally describing oranges, she said, "No, pineapples," and started describing oranges again. At this point, I took my phone out, Google oranges and pineapples and show her. She points at the oranges and yells at the top of her lungs, "Yes, those! I want those!" My manager told me we don't have oranges and she can either pick something else or eat what she has. She left. That is a crazy woman. Just honestly, color me surprised that a so-called Italian restaurant allowed Hawaiian pizza to be put on their menu. Where I live, it's the American-style pizzerias that have that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love pineapple on pizza. It's just that the Italians in Europe are a little more particular, read violent, about messing with their cuisine, I guess. "Sir, there are teeth in my food." I think, whoa, are you serious? Okay, I'll come check it out. Ma'am, those are onions. Well, it's weird. Can I order something else? Before I was a chef, I worked a year at a state fair in an Orient Express booth. A woman ordered a plate of sweet and sour chicken, and 10 minutes later came back with every fried chicken chunk broken open with the chicken consumed, and she demanded a refund saying that there was no chicken in the breading. I used to work at a zoo snack bar. We had some of those ice cream carts that had wheels, and we'd roll them out to different areas of the park and then stay there for the remainder of the day. On this particular day, I was stationed at the playground, one of the worst places to be because children would run rampant through the park while their parents sat around on benches, chatting with friends, or just really weren't paying attention to what their kids were doing. I'd have hundreds of kids come up to me on a daily basis and beg for ice cream, but of course I couldn't just give it to them. I'd always ask if they had any money, and they never did. I'd tell them to go ask their parents for some if they wanted money. It wasn't my problem. And on this particular day, it was exceptionally hot, and one kid had a hardcore temper tantrum when I told him I couldn't just give him ice cream. Like, full-blown on the floor, crying and screaming, and I'm just like, what the frick? And continue to help other customers around his howling body sprawled on the ground. He finally pulls himself together and goes to find his mother. About 15 minutes later, Bratty and his mum stroll over to the cart, the child sniffling and happy that he persuaded his mum for ice cream, and they start checking out the selections. We had about 15 different ice cream options, and all of the prices were clearly marked. The kid picks out the most expensive option, of course, and the mum's all like, "Oh, whatever you want, my sweet precious baby." I hand her the $350 ice cream and she unwraps it and hands it to him. He immediately starts drooling and slobbering all over it, and it was a day that was hot as hell, so it started melting quickly. She asks me how much it is, and I tell her, gesturing towards the clearly marked sign. She then started screaming at me about how she's not paying that much, and I'm just like, "Sorry, Mom, there's nothing I can do. He's already started eating it." She was flipping out at me and finally gives me the money, all in change of course, mostly pennies and nickels. And then she asks for napkins. F my life. The park wouldn't let us hand out napkins because too many people littered, and the amount that it costed us daily to clean up all the napkins in the park was too much for the park to afford, or so they said. Regardless, it wasn't my problem. I politely explain why we don't have napkins, and I apologize for the inconvenience, and this woman just flips out. She grabs the now disgustingly drippy ice cream from her son's mouth, starting another temper tantrum, this time with better reason, I guess, and she literally just throws it at me. She reaches into my tip jar and pulls out $3.50 and stomps away with her hysterical son, and I had to try and wipe the ice cream off my shirt with leaves from a nearby tree. I was forced to sit at my stand for the rest of the day, unable to do anything about it. Oh, I'm stealing this story from a server friend of mine. A horrible woman comes in and orders the mussels. After my friend brings the plate out, the woman claims that the kitchen stole the meat out of the shells. My friend tries to explain that live mussels are placed in the pan, so it's not possible that there are more shells than meat pieces. The woman then spreads out the shells and meat on the table to try and prove her point. She discovered she was wrong and then just stormed out. The awkward part was that the woman was at a table of 3 other friends who were mortified and paid for the meal with a huge tip. The woman orders fries for her and her friends after church. I bring the fries. "Oh, now, these are too cold. We want new fries." I go and make the fries myself. I cook them longer than normal and immediately serve them after taking them out of the fryer. They were steaming still. The woman looks at it, touches it, and I crap you not says, "Oh, these are ice cold." Her exact words. I just had to get the manager to deal with it. Was she a senior? I used to work in a place that attracted a lot of seniors, and I learned to just microwave certain things that younger folks would balk at. The microwaving part, because it kinda destroys the meal. Soup, for one. Wasn't served until that sucker boiled, even the cream soups. I guess the temperature sense must degenerate along with taste buds once you hit a certain age. My grandmother's like this. She likes her food so hot I can't even hold the bowl. I think back in the olden days people just licked stoves for fun or something. I was working at Dairy Queen, and let me tell you, I made some damn good blizzards. Anyway, this lady comes through drive-thru shrieking that she wanted a small Oreo blizzard. No big deal. When I handed it out, she jabbed at it with her spoon and looked at it like it was a dead mouse. She stated, "The Oreos are too pulverized. I want another." Which, the Oreos come pre-shredded. Whatever, they cost us 25 cents to make, so I make her another one, mixing it for about half a second, leaving massive chunks of Oreo on top and barely mixed in. I hand it out and she said it looks perfect. So, then we find her ulterior motive. She wanted the mistake for free. She asked, "Well, what are you going to do with the other one? Can I have it since you can't give it to another customer?" Oh, sorry, the Oreos are too pulverized, and I threw it away right in front of her. The alternative ending to this story, I was in the drive-thru at Starbucks, and the guy in front of me bought 4 different Frappuccinos, but they were made a size too small. His mistake in ordering, but they remade them. So I pulled up and the cashier asked if I wanted all the rejects. Since I was headed to work, I took them from my coworkers, and I got about a month of thank you coffees for free. I explained that they were free, but I guess I had really nice coworkers. I tipped the cashier pretty well too. "I choked on an avocado pit that was in my sushi," and she threatened to sue the company. We had to show her an actual avocado pit to end her complaints. Currently working as a chef, got a few creme brulees back. One of the times being that it was too brown, and another one when a customer complained about black dots on the custard, those being the vanilla. You know what, it's just refreshing to have one that's about stupid people rather than jerks trying to score free food by deliberately messing with their servers, so we'll let it pass. Once had a guy order a grade 9 Wagyu Scotch fillet, medium rare. This steak we sold for like $63, I think. It was rather expensive. He got the steak and cut it into tiny pieces because it was slightly under medium rare. Really a massive jerk move, because usually if someone says their steak is undercooked, you just chuck it back on the grill for a few seconds to get it to the right doneness. So yeah, we get this $60+ steak back in pieces, and now we have to cook another for this jerk. We make another one, no worries, and he does the exact same thing. cuts it into tiny pieces, says it's undercooked, and he's now wasted $120 worth of food. Everyone in the kitchen is freaking livid. He then orders a pasta, which I make and send out. This guy eats the entire thing, says it was crap, and then when he goes to pay, he said to the waitress, "Just charge me for a bowl of chips. It's okay, the boss will understand because we're friends." I don't know what the waitress did. I'm not sure what the boss thought about it either, because he was out for the night. Thinking of the whole thing really just gets me so mad. I wonder if these people premeditate this kind of stuff? Like just sitting at his job all day, fuming about something unrelated, and the only thing that keeps him from screaming at his family when he gets home is the thought of going to a restaurant and ruining very expensive food in an arrogant fashion. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. As a server, a trio of ladies ordered a pork sandwich and 2 cheeseburgers. Normal, right? No. They were on the Atkins diet, so they wanted no buns, no cheese, no toppings of any sort. So I bring out 3 plates, 2 with just patties and 1 with a pile of pork. "What is this? This is not what I ordered." "Well, ma'am, that's a pork sandwich minus the onions, coleslaw, cheese, buns, and fries." I'm not really sure what they were expecting. I had a dinner with a crazy family friend that refused to eat anything brought to the table. It was an old country-style restaurant with no menus. You eat what they bring out. She insisted that they prepare her special portions of their traditional recipe dishes, prepared precisely how she wanted them, and went back to the kitchen to supervise that they were following her instructions exactly. She told us that she had them remake her vegetables 3 times, and she said it with pride. I was 12 and it was my birthday dinner. I've never been so embarrassed. I asked the waiter to take me into the kitchen, and I told my folks that after she went back, I wanted to see the big kitchen. What I did, again, at 12, was apologize to all the cooking and waitstaff for my guest. For years I thought my parents didn't know. What I did know is that the manager stopped my mother on the way out and complimented her on having such a polite child. I was 33 when she finally told me.
"These wings are too hot. These dry seasoned wings aren't saucy enough,"
etc. The only pizza we have at our restaurant is a simple margarita pizza. One guy had me make him a meat lover's combo pizza with white sauce, which we don't have, so I had to reduce some Alfredo sauce. It took roughly 15 to 20 minutes to make, and he sent it back because the bottom of the pizza was too dark for him. He insisted I cooked it too close to the flames, and that's why it tasted too burnt for him. My issue is that we use a 3-deck conventional oven with no flames in sight. Mother fricker. Who in the frick goes to a restaurant and orders something that's not even on the menu? Way more people than you might expect, and we never say no. When I was working in a kitchen, a woman said her soup was too hot and she'd burned her mouth. Of course, she'd already finished said soup, so the chef, being the nice guy he is, gave her some sorbet to cool down her mouth. She was a rude person. Just yesterday, I'm a server, I had a table order the prime rib, and when the prime rib came out to her, she was extremely mad that her order wasn't correct. Apparently she wanted the French dip sandwich. Totally the same thing, and yes, I was supposed to know that by ordering the prime rib, a dish we have on our menu, she actually meant the French dip, and she wanted her meal comped. As a bartender, I once had a waitress bring back a dirty martini because it, quote, tasted like olives. Trying to sound impressive while ordering a drink, are we? I'm a line cook in a fairly upscale seafood restaurant. Once in the middle of a busy Saturday dinner rush, we got an order for an ahi tuna tartare. The way we plate our tartares is pretty elaborate and takes a good 5 to 7 minutes to create. I happened to be working Expo that day and was tasked with building the tartare. I sent it out, and it was frickin' beautiful. Wasabi and sriracha aioli designs surrounding the slices of cucumber, seaweed salad and ginger piled around the perfectly stacked raw tuna marinated in ponzu and eel sauce. I sent it out the window and it came back almost immediately because the lady who ordered it doesn't do raw fish. Long story short, she requested we saute the fish and rebuild the plate for her with a gross pile of well-done cooked tuna chunks slopped in the middle. Please, know what it is you're ordering before you order. I saw somebody once send a meal back because they gave her too much food. I don't know why she just didn't not eat it all instead. I once heard an old man getting pretty flustered and really irritated because he said he wanted 8 French fries and he got 11. "You whippersnappers, it's not good for me to have that much salt." "Sir, you can just leave some." "Don't backsass me, young man. You know this place makes damn good fries." I was eating at the restaurant at the Four Seasons Hotel in Maui, and a nasty old woman sent her lamb chops back, probably a $90 meal, because there wasn't salt on the table. She got the entire refund after witching to the manager for 45 minutes because the tables didn't have salt and pepper on them. The food itself wasn't even the issue, I think. Today I learned that I wouldn't last a day and a half as a waiter without drop-kicking somebody. Yep. As with many of our other hospitality-related posts, this has produced mixed feelings in the veteran waiter narrator. I'm alternately fist-pumping when the idiots are held accountable for being scammers, or swearing in sympathy when they get given what they want, even though it's completely their fault. I was a server some time ago. My restaurant sold large and small bowls of soup. Once, somebody ordered a large bowl and finished half of it, and then asked if they could be charged for a small bowl instead. Ugh, I hate those people. Someone ordered the 10-ounce steak and only ate half and wanted to be charged for half, while still being allowed to take the rest home. I had to sit down with this lady while she explained it all to me, and I am now dumber for even listening to her. As a waiter, I had a lady complain that her pasta was too soft, so I had it remade, but then it was too chewy, so I asked her if there was something else she'd like instead of the pasta. So she ordered lasagna. Yep. It was so awkward because by this time everyone else at her table was done eating. How are people unaware how awkward it is for everyone else at the table? Well, you see, they're self-centered. They have no idea how other people feel because they just don't give an F. I once watched a lady pluck a hair from her head and put it on her pizza. I assumed she wanted it for free. However, before she got the chance to complain, I informed her I'd witnessed it with a smug look that shut down her argument. They sent it back because the waiter who brought the food was a foreigner. I'm not sure if this applies, but I worked as a shift supervisor at a Pizza Hut. A woman with 3 kids has a long wait to get a table. I felt so bad, so I offered to pick up her bill and then sat them. She then ordered 18 pizzas for her and her 3 kids. It taught me a valuable lesson that being nice while running a business is impossible. This is exactly why you shouldn't say anything. Just when they ask for the check, say, "No, it's been taken care of. Thanks for coming in this evening." They get their free meal, but they don't have the opportunity to take advantage. When I was younger, I was a cook for a really popular Denny's. It was basically the cult spot to go to. Wedding? Denny's after. Prom? Denny's after. You get the idea. At the time, I had bright pink hair, something to keep in mind for later. Now, it was tapering down a bit, it was around 1 or so it's before bar rush. So my other cook for the shift took a break, leaving just me. One of the waitresses came back saying that one of her customers found a hair in her French toast. I saw the plate. Everything had been eaten aside from these 2 little pieces with a long black hair between them. Now, I made her a new order. French toast, bacon, hash browns, and I brought it back to her table. As I put it down, I said, "Here's your remade order. I'd like to point out that your waitress has short blonde hair." I removed my hat. "I have pink hair, and you have long black hair. Conveniently the same color as the hair you found. Next time you want free food, go to a frickin' soup kitchen." And I went back to my line. My next manager and GM were both huge green herb smokers at the time and thought the whole thing was hilarious. I used to work for a sandwich restaurant that you filled out your order on a paper bag on and wrote your name on it, and when it was done, we'd call out your name and you'd come pick it up. The sandwich making process took about 5 minutes, so most people would go and fill up their drinks and sit down to wait. But not a few special snowflakes. They'd come in, order, walk to the end of the prep line, and just grab the sandwiches that were there as the actual owners of said restaurant were approaching. They'd sit down and begin to eat it. The sandwich thieves would then get very flustered that the sandwich was nothing like the one they'd ordered, and push angrily to the front of the line to yell and complain, while the people whose sandwiches had been taken began to do the same, and we had to make a ton of replacement sandwiches because a group of idiots didn't understand the concept that if they didn't fill out the bag for that sandwich and if their name isn't on it, it's not theirs. Apparently, there were too many cherries in the cherry pie. Frick you. Turns out she couldn't eat it because she was allergic to shrimp. She ordered the jumbo shrimp pasta. I really thought that was self-explanatory. Another guy sent back his cheesesteak because it was too cold. It was pretty cold because he sat and drank for like 45 minutes with it sitting in front of him before he even touched it. In my table waiting days, I had a guy eat his entire 14-ounce prime rib except for the fat. He had made a pile of the fat on his plate and asked me to weigh it so he could have a pro rata refund equivalent to the weight of the fatty bits. For those who don't know, roasted prime rib contains a ring of fat in the middle and is usually served with some fat at the tip. People enjoy eating the fat with the meat. assistant manager at a burrito place. During our annual town festival, it got packed. I'm talking more in one day than we normally do in a month kind of thing. We had a guy complain about the wait. There were 30 chairs in the place and easily twice as many people waiting for meals. We still had a line running out the door. It was so packed that we were just yelling for names, handing you your order, and politely explaining that we were breaking fire code and we needed customers to head outside to the tables set up for the festival. It was, oh my god, packed. I can't stress how crazy it was. So, this guy is complaining about the wait and our cashier tells him that we're working on it. He gets it and then immediately asks for it to be remade. He says this with the wait, he knows it's cold without even trying to eat it. Okay, so we make it a priority, we rush it out in a few seconds, and then he goes to stand by the window and eat. Whatever, I don't have time to argue with him, and then he's back complaining about how he wants another burrito because this one is wrong. I go out and he's telling me it's wrong, not how or why it's wrong. The owner comes flying out of the kitchen, pulls the register open, pulls out a 20, walks over, pulls the half-eaten $7 burrito out of the guy's hands, hands him the bill and tells him to get the hell out. It was pretty nice. That day I learned that if you're a big enough problem, my boss would literally pay you to go away. Have you ever met a real-life savant who didn't realize that they were a genius? We have a paid summer internship program for juniors and seniors pursuing construction management degrees. 5 years ago, we had a young woman come into the program in her junior year. She was very tiny in stature and very quiet, but we soon learned giant in intellect and loud where it counted. The way we operate is each intern will spend 3 weeks on a different project, learning a different role within the organization, then 3 weeks on site as a superintendent intern, 3 weeks on site with safety, 3 with project management, and 3 on site with quality control. After each period, I received a call praising her ingenuity and ability to adapt and improvise in any situation. At the end of the internship, we had a plus delta review of their performance, and based on that review, we make a determination of whether to offer them a place the following summer. In the case of a senior, we determine if we want to extend them a full-time employment offer. Every review she received from each department all said the same thing. Hire her now. We extended an offer for a salaried position, part-time, from that point through her senior year, along with tuition reimbursement. This young lady still amazes everyone every single day. She's 25 years old, making an amazing salary and absolutely dominating any project she's given. If she doesn't know it today, she'll practically be an expert tomorrow. She's incredibly impressive. I can see her having my job one day, that of operations director. Hopefully it's after I retire, though. Criminal defense lawyer here. I had a client who was a low-level substance dealer and weapon runner. Most street-level guys have a very different kind of intelligence that doesn't translate all that well to the white-collar world. Many of my clients ask to read case law, and I've only really met one of them who could digest it and discuss it intelligently with me. This guy. He'd do his own research from the jail, which isn't uncommon, but this guy did it well and would actually send me relevant cases that were helpful to the issues in his case. And when I explained to him why some were not helpful, he got it. He asked good questions and used that discussion to inform future research. There are a lot of inmates who consider themselves jailhouse lawyers, and this guy was smart enough to actually be one. I think about him a lot and I wonder what his life would have been like if he was fortunate enough to be afforded the same opportunities during childhood that I enjoyed. Good on you for realizing that even the ones who aren't as brilliant as this guy were just a different kind of intelligence rather than being specifically like him. A lot of us write off people who aren't good at our niche skills as being idiots, so it's a good thing to keep in mind. My dad grew up believing that he was dumb and would never amount to anything. His teachers all hated him, and the first time he went to university, he was kicked out. Around the same time as I started university, my mum finally convinced him to try again to get a higher education himself. He's often said he's too stupid to go back to school, but he speaks about 6 languages fluently and has so many interesting history factoids that whenever we watch any movie, we always have to pause at least 4 times for a lengthy discussion about it, and he remembers more book quotes than anyone I've ever met. He grew up in communist Hungary and East Germany, and has since then climbed mountains and been scuba diving in the Atlantic, among a bunch of other adventures. Whatever the discussion, he's got a story to tell. He's the coolest dad ever, but for as long as I can remember, my family has struggled financially since he couldn't get a job that paid well enough. It makes me so happy that he's finally reaching his full potential now at 51 years old, and we're all really proud of him. He dreams of being a teacher one day. He will be the best teacher his future students could ever wish for. People who are just naturally great teachers without actually being educators. I've always thought people who could teach others are incredibly smart because they're aware enough of what they know to present it to others in a way that they can understand it. This guy I used to work for was a phenomenal teacher of all things paint, powder coating, and color matching and blending. He had a real passion for it, and it showed in the manner in which he taught and demonstrated what he was talking about. In saying that, he was also very highly strung and had some mental health issues that held him back from doing great things, and so believed he was an idiot. I mean, he wasn't, but no amount of telling him would help. I had a kid in my class that never took anything seriously, skipped class, brought booze to class, and did numerous other things. You name it, he probably did it. But man, this motherfricker knew his stuff whenever he did pay attention. He understood things when other people were struggling to learn whatever was being taught that day, be it math, science, English, or reading. It makes me a little sad because he was always a troublemaker, but deep down I knew that he was just very smart and capable of doing good in school. He just chose to never do it, or generally just didn't care. I don't know at this point. I think he got involved with the wrong crowd early on, unfortunately. Former coworker of mine. He came to Germany as a refugee in his young teenage years and had trouble in school due to the language barrier. Also poor support, a tough family situation, kind of typical refugee problems. Then he was unemployed and Job Center, part of German welfare dealing with unemployment, sent him to the security company that I worked for at the time because conditions of employment are almost non-existent in this field. When he was on my team for an event, I, as team leader, had to show him the ropes. The event lasted 10 consecutive nights, and we faced several different challenges that were part of the job. Every now and again, he had a genius idea of how to solve a particular problem. The following year, I got him on my team whenever I could, trained him, and when I left the company, he inherited my position as team leader. I don't actually know whether he knew about how smart he is, but he was so insecure in the beginning that I boldly assume he didn't. When I was in uni, I took part in a project called Inside Out, where we would go in a prison and have criminology lessons with the inmates who we called inside students. We didn't teach them or observe them, we were all learning together. And this one guy was just a genius. He had this way of describing a phenomenon that he'd noticed and thought about without realizing that it was an actual theory that existed. Like, we'd studied them in class, so we knew about them, but he'd just come up with it from personal experience. From labeling theory to functionalism, he had just outlined them like he'd thought of them in the shower. It was extraordinary. He was also a bit unstable and prone to bursts of anger, often towards himself. He seemed to become frustrated very easily if he couldn't explain or understand something perfectly. And then one day he just stopped showing up. I ended up talking to the guards, who told me that he felt like he was too stupid for the class. Seriously, he was convinced that we were all smarter than he was, and that he wouldn't be able to keep up. I don't know if they ever did, but we asked the guards and a few inside students if they'd tell him that we loved studying with him, that he was starting really interesting discussions and that his observations always made us think more deeply, that his presence made the class better. And just to be clear, I don't mean to say that he was smart for someone in prison. This guy was a genius. Everyone but him knew that he was by far the most intelligent person in the room, but he didn't see it. We were told that they'd ask if he could participate the following year, and I really hoped that he did. As a teen, I worked for a video rental place, like Blockbuster, but not. My manager spoke 5 languages and did all of the accounts without the need of a calculator. I asked him why he was just a manager at a movie rental place. He could be making a lot of money doing anything else. He told me, "Making less money is the price of my happiness." That always stuck with me. Someone mentioned this already, but people who can easily teach others complex systems or ideas. My husband is one such person. Microbiologist, workflow management, and plays D&D on his downtime. He can analyze a difficult concept, distill the relevant information, and make it easily accessible to someone and teach it in a patient, unassuming manner quickly without making the other party feel stupid or uninformed. And he's modest as hell. He has no idea how hard it is to educate people, never trying to one-up or show off his knowledge. He's charismatic and emotionally intelligent. He honestly has no idea how rare his level of kindness and intelligence are in others. He's the best person I've ever met. That wonderful mix of being intelligent, humble, and incredibly kind. What a unicorn. Your husband sounds dreamy. Is he single? Oh, wait, yeah. I'm clearly not among the people being described in this video. My mother. She was raised in a poor, troubled family and left school very early to escape. Even now, she'll say she's uneducated, which is true, but she sure ain't stupid. She raised a bunch of us without much money and has always been resourceful and canny at making ends meet.
She can do fairly complicated math in her head, does extensive research before making large purchases, forwards me screenshots that are quite sophisticated scam emails and tells me why they're fake, and she's 78 now and has always embraced new tech. She has no trouble using her smartphone or her PC. She even troubleshoots for her neighbors. She still lives on the same poverty-stricken area we grew up in, and she's often helping her neighbors advocate for themselves, writing letters, telling them who to contact and what to say. She's also a keen observer of people. She sees them as they are and takes them as they are with no judgment. She was always progressive for her time and passed down zero racism or other prejudices to us kids. I wonder what she could have done if she had the opportunities that she made damn sure we had. Your description is very like my grandma. She passed away 2 years ago at 81. 8th grade education, which was normal at the time for the area because her parents were farmers. At one point, she worked a sewing job where they were paid by the piece, and Grandma worked so fast that they changed the rule and started paying by the hour because she was earning too much money. She ran their dairy farm, plus corn and soybean fields, cattle, pigs, chickens, and all the equipment, often paying additional hired help. Grandpa didn't really know how to manage the books, so Grandma did it all. After they retired, she had a smartphone before I did. She also had a huge 90s desktop computer and printer. One time, probably about 5 years or so ago, we were playing cards and she pulled out these professional, nice-looking scoring sheets. I thought she must have purchased them somewhere. No, turns out she made them and figured out how to scan copies. I didn't know she even had a scanner. When I told her I was surprised, she was annoyed at me and was like, "Hey, I know how to do stuff. I do this and this and this for the neighbors and this for that and the other thing," ranting about her elite computer skills. I had no idea, and I was like, "Grandma, do you know I'm pretty sure my mum couldn't do some of the stuff you're talking about?" She also had plenty of stories about identifying and thwarting scammers, especially the door-to-door kind. She liked to smile and waste their time, and then when she refused to buy in whatever they were selling, they got angry and she'd play dumb and offended and laugh about it later. She was also progressive in a very heavily conservative area. Man, I miss her. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I'm volunteer staff at a math summer camp targeted at children who like doing math. Most of the kids that we get are the standard doing well in school with grades to prove it sort of kids. But it frequently happens that some kid has signed up and the parents just tell us that their child doesn't really do well in school in general, or math in particular, but they just like doing math-related puzzles. That's cool, because that's all we ask for. And often enough, these kids come in with very interesting insights and solutions because they happened to approach the problems from different angles than the majority. They might be quite intelligent, but not in a way that expresses itself well within the standard framework of education. The same thing happens on the EQ social level. A few years back, we got a sign-up where the parents warned us that their son had great difficulties making friends or socializing in general. On the first day of camp, the kid took a chessboard and went to sit down to play against himself. Perfectly fine. But not much later, another boy walked up to him and asked if he could join the game. They start playing and talking, and they end up being practically inseparable the rest of the week. The kid that just had difficulties making friends just made a new best friend faster than anyone else there. You just need to give folks the right environment. In my first year of uni, or college, I sat next to a quiet girl who never thought of herself as smart. This is while everyone else was loud about what they knew and acted like they were top of the class when they really weren't. She never really showed off her knowledge. We just graduated this year, and she was honored the University Medal for her thesis, #1 student in almost 400 students, but I bet you she still doesn't think of herself as especially intelligent. My brother. Everyone used to tell him that he was just average because he got average grades, but this kid is so frickin' smart. He's a huge history buff, and one time spent about half an hour explaining to me the importance of some Civil War battle and how it was pivotal in helping the Union win the war. I don't remember the exact details because all I could think about was the level of depth he just got into explaining and analyzing, and also explaining in a way that helped me to understand at the time. My brother's intelligence is the definition of quality, and I'd shout that from the rooftops because as his older sister, I'm so frickin' proud of him. My dad. He's dyslexic, and growing up in the education system in the 70s didn't provide any support, so he's all but illiterate. He left school at 15 with no qualifications. He's always said he's stupid, and that upsets me so much. He won't believe it when we tell him he's not. Me, my mum, and my sister all have education beyond degree level, and he's smarter than any of us. He's eloquent, but sometimes mispronounces new words that he's heard in a different accent. Our accent is heavy on the R sound, so I've noticed him adding it to words that don't have Rs. But of course he's never seen it written down to know. He watches historical documentaries and tells us about how they're linked to the ones he's watched a couple of years prior. He once drove me to a university 3 hours away, using the route he'd driven in reverse once without checking a map. I wish he could see himself as intelligent. It seems like a lot of people have things in common with this comment and will enjoy this story. He did actually do a speech for my wedding. I was worried about asking him because I wasn't sure how he'd manage and didn't want to pressure him on anything, but he was keen to do it. My mum made cue cards with picture hints and they did not help him. He just had it written out and learnt it off by heart and used cue cards with the full speech to help him. He can read it when he knows what it says, and his speech was by far the most confident and well-performed speech out of all of us. Give him a birthday card with more words than happy birthday and he's very unhappy, but he can smash out a full-on speech with no hesitation. Not for the first time, we have to wonder how many people who are otherwise geniuses have been left behind when they weren't born in the right time or place, or who can't be taught under the education system they have. Glad that your dad's thriving in the right environment. He sounds charismatic as hell. My granddad left school at 12. He's dyslexic, but back in his day, that wasn't a recognized thing. He has a particular way with animals, like he always knows what's wrong. He can fix anything. He's a prolific reader and people just gravitate to him. He's the most helpful person you've ever met and will literally go out of his way to help anyone. My mum's boyfriend. We have a variety of specialists in my family, from medicine to art to education to software. We go around the table at family gatherings and try to stump him with questions. He's never gotten one wrong to date. He just knows everything about everything. Obviously has a photographic memory, reads voraciously, and delivers car parts for a living. I work in manufacturing, so we get a lot of uneducated people. There are a lot of people out there who are smart, but for various reasons weren't properly served by the public schools. They might be barely literate or can hardly string 2 words together coherently, but they solve problems beautifully or always have workable ideas, or they talk about ideas rather than people or events. It's hard to quantify, but you know it when you see it. I started out in R&D engineering, but I was responsible for several product lines on top of some new product lines. There was one new product line that was manufactured on a fairly complicated machine that only a few people knew how to troubleshoot and repair, myself being one of them. I was at home one night and got a call that the system went down, so I drove to work, walked in, and it was running. The operator was sitting in the corner just doodling on his notebook. I said, "Hey, I got a call that this wasn't running." "Yep, so it's running now. What changed?" "I don't know." "Uh-huh. Did you fix it?" "Maybe." Over time, I realized that this guy was way more capable than he was letting on. He eventually told me that he plays dumb so they don't overload him with responsibility, since he knows he won't get a pay raise or promotion out of it. I was a bit naive at the time and couldn't really understand why someone would have that perspective. And believe me, I understand now. Anytime I had an R&D run, I started trying to get him on my team. Eventually, I got him transferred to the department I managed and trained him up on technician duties, pushing him for a promotion. I knew a guy who was very smart with the ability to be extremely manipulative and had no idea. He always got good grades in school, often without studying much at all. What was more impressive was his ability to read people's body language, vocal tone fluctuation, and micro-expressions. Often he'd know what emotions someone was feeling and how best to proceed. The guy was a master at subtle communications, such as mirroring and framing conversations so he'd be dominant. He was able to use this social intelligence to get with girls, but he'd also use it to get people to do things he wanted. One of the clearest examples of manipulation that I know of is that he got his friend to break up with his long-term girlfriend. His friend's girlfriend was kind of a drag and would be a little annoying around the group, so he subtly started to slip in emotional and logical suggestions whenever he saw his friend in a moment of emotional vulnerability. Within a week, his friend ended that relationship. Getting away from these specific types of puppet master is the best thing you can do. I've seen people who were just straight up used by him. I grew up with a kid who was one of the smartest people that I ever met. He was in all the excelled classes, a straight-A student. Academics came so easily to this guy. He could have gone to any college he wanted. Well, he just couldn't stay out of trouble, living the thug life, selling substances, and running with wannabe gangsters. It's been 20 or so years since we've been out of high school, and he's done a few stints in prison, still lives with his parents, makes a meager living selling green herb, and it's crazy seeing so much potential lost. The people that strike me are the ones that eliminate the wrong conclusions, somehow, before solving an answer. The wrong conclusions just don't dawn on them. I met a lady that went to an Ivy League school. She could talk to you and hold a nice conversation. She could then turn around and talk to someone else at a higher level. Then, when asked a technical question out of her field of expertise, she could give you a complex answer. She spoke to people on whatever level they were speaking on. I have a friend of the family that took every class at a community college before going on to get his degree. He retained all of that information. Interestingly, he liked to speak in basic terms and hold everyday conversations. If he got shunned at a party, he would initially ignore it and keep hanging out with you. Eventually, as the people who shunned him came to a point where they had to stop their conversation, he'd butt in. They often couldn't figure out the answer to what they were talking about. He would just chime in with a smile and explain the rest of the concept to them. Then he'd turn back to you and keep bullcrapping. I've seen him do that multiple times. My friend in high school thinks that he's dumb, but he has an absolutely phenomenal knowledge of politics and the legal economic system. He has dyslexia, but you wouldn't be able to tell because he reads more seamlessly than most of the rest of us. I wish he would recognize how smart he is, because I think he doesn't aim as high as he could achieve because he doesn't think that he's smart enough. My current girlfriend is actually extremely smart. Her intuition is very good with people. Her problem-solving skills are impressive in situations where she's comfortable, and she has a very deep understanding of the human psyche. But her mother has been gaslighting her since childhood, trying to keep her fully reliant on her. I've held my tongue at points just to try and not be that boyfriend that ruins a relationship, but instead just showing her how smart she really is and where she might have a weak point that I might be able to help with. I've walked her through my thought process, and she picks it up very quickly. I always wonder how far she could be at this point in her life had her mother just supported her instead of tearing her down. But just in the short time I've been dating her, I've seen her grow a lot. And I'm very excited to see where she can soar off to. I just hope that she takes me with her. What is the weirdest thing that a customer has requested at Build-A-Bear? A native family wanted to put a real bear tooth inside the bear. It was for a newborn. I made sure to check the sharpness of the tooth so it wouldn't puncture the fabric. Nothing weird with that job though, although there was this time when this old drunk guy walked by the store and tried to steal a little girl by the entrance. A father intervened and got her back, but people were more bewildered by this guy doing it so obviously rather than getting upset. I hated the store's music though. Kids singing hit songs. Who else remembers the Happy Bear Day song? My god, I hated the chipper face and voice we had to put on, and I hated handling the fluff when refilling it. I worked there for almost 5 years back in the early 2000s. Once there was a woman who came in with her son's monkey and asked for a hole to be stitched up. This was common, and we all knew how to do a basic ladder stitch, so my manager agreed to it. When she took it in the back, she noticed that there were holes only in the crotch of the monkey and that the fur was matted. That's when she realized that this woman's son was probably doing things to that doll. I don't remember if my manager put on gloves and stitched it or offered the woman a new doll, but that was by far the craziest request. I also once had to get into that bear costume after somebody else wore it for 2+ hours because this one lady complained that her son wanted to meet the bear and we had packed up 10 minutes early. That sucked so bad. I have a few good ones. The weirdest was this mother and daughter. The daughter was probably in her mid-20s, and they specifically came in looking for a little hat. I showed them the hats and they bought a cowboy hat. I tried to make typical conversation at the counter. Usually you ask if it's a gift, but then I asked if it was for a special bear that they already had. The pair looked at each other and then proceeded to explain that the cowboy hat was not for a bear, but for a puppet of a man's, well, private parts. They're a mother and daughter comedy duo who have a Naughty Bits puppet and adult comedy show. This one trouser snake was badly in need of a hat. Watching a teenage girl make a bear dressed like her boyfriend, for her boyfriend while he was there. I've never seen someone try so hard to look interested but failing. Teenage love, I guess. The weirdest thing is all of the middle-aged women who come in every time something new is released. They collect them, but they're always super weird people. Look, as a man who collects and paints tiny figurines, I'm not going to call all collectors weird people, but I will admit that there's on average a greater number of what you would call highly eccentric characters in our ranks. I think every hobby has 4 or 5 normies just kind of hiding from everyone else. Not weird, but heartbreaking. Had an old woman come in and request 5 bears, each with a personalized voice box. She was in the late stages of cancer and was getting a bear for each of her grandkids with a different message for each one to remember her by.
Then there was the one that was potentially heartbreaking, ultimately awkward and traumatizing for those involved. A coworker used to work in a different store, and one day a person came in, picked a bear, and sort of faffed around about a while before taking it to be stuffed. The coworker puts the bear on the machine, hits the pedal, and is covered in a cloud of dust, along with the guest and the store. Turns out the person had poured their late partner's cremated remains inside the bear and not said anything. Pro tip, if you want to put ashes inside a Build-A-Bear, get a little urn and put some ashes into that, and put that in the bear. Loose ash is bad. Back in the earlier Build-A-Bear days, I was asked to put an urn that contained the ashes of their father who had recently passed from cancer into the bear. I didn't know what to say, and my manager was on a break. They were really sweet, and I completed the task for them. Read Teddy, if I recall correctly. They'd also previously recorded his voice that also went into the Teddy. 20 minutes later, when my manager returned, I informed her of what happened and how I handled it, and within the next few months we had a store policy of no deceased remains. Looking back on it, I'm happy that I could do that for them. They even dressed it like him and had planned to have it on the mantle for the family and grandchildren to press the hand and hear him. I worked at Build-A-Bear for 8 years. It was honestly a pretty great job. The weirdest request I ever had was a woman bringing in a moose, not our brand. It was a gift from her boyfriend, and her child had ripped the head clean off. She wanted to know if we could fix it. I was one of the better ones at the sewing, so the manager brought it to me. I told the woman I'd do my best. I was able to get the head back on, returned it to the woman, and she said it looked as good as new. One day we had a kindergarten teacher drag in this huge Eeyore stuffed animal that the kids loved. It had gone flat over the years and smelled and looked just as gross. We actually opened it and refilled it. The smell as the air and stuffing went into it was awful. Sewed it back up and sent her on her way. We had multiple people come in to put pacifiers in the bear to break their little ones off the habit. One particular mum did that, and then came back 3 days later and had us open it up and remove it. The saddest was the woman who put a mini urn of her parents' ashes inside. Those are the ones that stick out to me anyway. I never had any weird guest experiences, just weird experiences with the management. I was ultimately fired because I refused to stand outside the store and dance. We were on the lower level of a mall, and the manager told me to try and make eye contact with children on the second level, and in so many words, get them to throw a tantrum so the parent would bring them in. I'd been a good employee, and the job was otherwise very fun, but I was glad to go. That manager lived and breathed that job and made the whole store very uncomfortable. I wasn't an employee, but I was there for this story. I was getting a Build-A-Bear done for my friend for their birthday. I was going to make it full of inside jokes and a few light inappropriate jokes. In front of me was a guy with a bear that looked like he actually put some thought into it. I was standing behind him when he did his recording. He was nice and cool, and then he grabbed the mic. I thought he was going to say something nice because he told the guy working there that it was for his girlfriend. And here's how this guy started his recording. "Hey there, you fat B-word. I know you're effing Roberto, you fricking harlot. You fricking cow." And keep in mind, he's screaming this in a store full of young children. That employee didn't stop him because I assume he was too scared that the guy would probably rip out his throat if he intervened. Parents were scrambling over to cover their kids' ears. The guy did this for I think a minute, but it felt like an eternity. After getting his voice box sewn into the bear, he practically skipped out of the store happy as a clam. I know why he did it. I'm sure he planned a nice date with her and then he'd give her the bear and crush her world. But this guy was yelling at the top of his lungs. When I made a dirty joke, I was at least quiet so that the kids behind me didn't hear. Everybody wanted to kill him, but they were also too scared to stop him. Not really weird, but everyone was speechless in that Build-A-Bear. One of the few regrets in life is that I wasn't eating at that fancy Italian bistro on 4th, the one where they've got real candles on the tables, not the electric fake ones, and the live musician Federetti who softly pours at his accordion and sings slowly between sips of wine while you chew at your tortellini, savoring the rich homespun flavors and rigid meets soft textures and the sheer aesthetic warmth of the place. And to your right, a well-dressed couple clinking their glasses and smiling, and he hands her a card and a box of chocolates and a bear, and she awes and laughs and kisses him and squeezes the bear and, "Hey there, you fat B-word. I know you're effing Roberto, you fricking harlot. You fricking cow." I was interviewed. It was a group interview and they asked us all questions. Towards the end, they asked us individually if we wanted to sing a song, but stressed we didn't have to. Only employees who sang moved on in the interview process. And yes, I agree I should have gone with "Let the bodies hit the floor." My girlfriend and her grad school friends made a bear called Catastrophe Bear, and he said, "Everything is awful." The employees at the Build-A-Bear in the mall near me told me that a lady would come in with her pet monkey that she treated as her child. She used it as a clothing store for the monkey. She also tried to sue the local school district into letting the monkey attend, but was unsuccessful. I worked there in high school about 10 years ago now. I guess the weirdest thing, but was very common, was putting dead relatives' recorded voices into stuffed animals. One was for a little girl whose father had died in Iraq. I was definitely crying while I sewed that one up. Other than that, there were a few bronies that came in for Rainbow Dash. They were always very awkward, but nice. I remember being asked to repair a Smurfette because she was getting, quote, a little loose. Okay, first of all, Papa Smurf didn't create Smurfette, Gargamel did. She was sent in as Gargamel's evil spy with the intention of destroying the Smurf village, but the overwhelming goodness of the Smurf way of life transformed her. And as for the whole promiscuity scenario, well, that just couldn't happen. Smurfs are asexual. They don't even have reproductive organs under those little white pants. That's what's so illogical, you know, about being a Smurf. What's the point of living if you don't have a little blue member? Damn it, Donnie. But also, yes, I have gone a little off the rails, including that commenter's rant. Why? Because I coincidentally recently read the Smurf comic, Where Smurfette Arrives, and let me tell you, viewers, it is one of the most wildly misogynistic things I have ever seen. I mean, my God, it has to be seen to be believed. A woman had come into the store, I was the only person on as the opening manager, and Charmander had just come out that morning. I was understandably busy and was helping a large, needy family when I noticed a woman come in. I went up to greet her and let her know I was almost done and she'd have my undivided attention soon. This woman was in rough shape. She looked like she was fresh out of the hospital, battered, bruised, cut up, and stitched back together. She seemed distracted and upset, so I assured I'd be no more than a couple of minutes and to look at the options. I finally finished with the others and started talking to her. It turned out her and her husband and child were hit by a drunk driver coming home from a movie that weekend, and her husband hadn't made it. We were both a weepy mess, and all she wanted was a bear with a saved Snapchat video of him singing a silly little song he made up for her. We charged her shattered phone a bit from my power bank and got the sound in. Going through the heart ceremony, it felt like I was performing a memorial service for her. We wrapped the heart with a bit of his favorite t-shirt and sewed it up. The bear was dressed in the Chicago Bears gear, and we made a birth certificate. After checkout, she asked if she could come back in to add his ashes, and I had to tell her I could get in a lot of trouble, but showed her a video of our stitching method and gave her a length of needle and thread to attempt on her own. She gave me a long, teary hug, but left so much happier. I know it might not be the weirdest story, but I'll never forget her. That kind of day makes me love working at Build-A-Bear. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I've been censored in my bear's name twice at Build-A-Bear. Once it happened when I was 5 and once when I was 6. When I was 5, I got a bear who I wanted to name Honey Punch. Shut up, I was 5. The attendant told me no, punch is a bad word, so she forced me to change it to Bunch. The same thing happened with the second bear next year, albeit different first half of the name. I worked for them for a good 2 years a couple of years back. I put sealed ashes of pets inside, voices of dead relatives, my favorite being a girl who wanted her grand's voice in, and we did it using a recording from her phone.
Hello, Shirley. Just ringing to see how you are. Love you, you little C-word.
And sewed in pieces of comfort blankets and other childhood keepsakes. There was this independent store in a mall that did the same thing. A woman brought her young daughter in to celebrate the little girl's first communication with a spirit, saying,
"She's become a seer, like me."
I worked at Build-A-Bear for 7 years, and I don't know that any requests were super weird. We put recordings of deceased relatives, recordings of fetal heartbeats, pacifiers, and squeakers from dog toys in animals. Okay, that last one does sound a bit strange, but the rest were usually very sweet and touching moments, and sometimes they were exciting for the kiddo who was graduating from their pacifier. I did get called a lot of names when the holidays rolled around and we were out of the holiday animals. That's no longer an issue since Maxine retired and everything was produced in ridiculous quantities instead of limited ones. I was often asked to produce products we didn't have in stock, but that's retail. I think the weirdest experiences were helping kids dress their animals. Some folks have interesting choices in outfits. I remember one little bear left our store in a tank top, undies, and heels, with bows over the ears, of course. The owner of said bear was a 6-year-old girl, but she stayed within her budget. I actually loved irking and working there, and if I had any free time or ever needed any extra money, I'd probably go back. My mum and I are both adults, and we both like stuffed animals. My mum wanted a lion from Build-A-Bear a long time ago, and the employee wouldn't let her finish making her look until she made a wish on the heart. The strangest request that employee probably ever got was, "Stop telling me to make a wish." For those who are wondering, the woman wouldn't let her continue without doing the heart ceremony, and my mother told her she reserved the right to make a wish later. So we were no longer being held captive by a woman with an unsewn lion. Frankly, if it were me, I would have complained to corporate that being condescending to adults lost them future business. It's actually a shame, because they do many animals where part of the proceeds go to the WWF, including my mum's lion and a wolf I got later from the person I was dating at the time. Sometimes you just want to get a stuffed animal and support the wild, you know? Oh god, I worked there a lifetime ago, around 2000 or so. I loved that job. One of the weirdest things was when a customer bought a pet's ashes in a little plastic baggie. I was no longer surprised by the ashes thing, but I was really surprised when they asked me to sew the bag of ashes to the outside of the stuffed cat. I really can't remember if this is 100% true, but I think I passed off that customer to my manager because I can't sew that well. There was another one. My store was in this fairly large mall in suburban New York, and it was a fairly popular stop to some touring events. I remember when Jim Belushi and Dan Aykroyd stopped by to promote their Sacred Hearts blues band, and my store manager authorized us to make a teddy bear and dress it like a blues brother. But only one teddy bear. To share between them, I guess. I was celebrity starstruck when I presented it to them, but looking back on the old Polaroid I have of the moment, the weary, confused looks from both of them will always stick out in my mind. I worked at Build-A-Bear for a few months when I was at uni, and it was great. I didn't find anything super weird as I worked in a new store and wasn't there very long, but I just found the amount of money people would fork out for the latest bear absolutely insane. We had a kid who was a huge brat, pulling things off shelves, crying and shouting when his parents said no. His bear ends up about 70 pounds. Then the next day, the mum comes back in saying how her son wants some different boots and skates for his chase bear now, and doesn't like the ones they bought. She didn't bring any of the tags in or a different receipt though, so I just handed her off to the manager because I didn't want to deal with that. My favorite ones were a couple and their toddler. The mum was pregnant and they were making a bear for their baby-to-be. Their son was so excited that he got to kiss the heart that went into his future sibling's bear, and it was so adorable. Overall, a great place to work and would recommend it if you don't hate kids. Not an employee, but a few years ago I went with my little sister to get some horse thing done, and we were waiting in line to do the heart thing where you have to kiss it and promise to love the thing forever. The girl in front of us asked the lady doing the hearts if her bear was gay because it was rainbow. The employee looked a bit taken aback but recovered and told her the bear could be gay if she wanted, and in the most lethal voice I've ever heard out of a small child she says, "If you give him a gay heart, I'll rip it out myself and feed it to the wolves." That haunts me to this day. I mean, I hope that that employee gave the bear the gayest heart that they'd ever given any animal in the world, and that the bear came alive and taught the little child and her family some gosh damn tolerance. Also, why did you pick the rainbow bear if you're going to be a jerk about it, kid? I had parents come in and ask me to put their young daughter's pacifiers into the bear. They insisted she had agreed as a way to stop using them. The little girl looked horrified the entire time we stuffed them in the bear. She definitely wasn't ready to let them go. I was working at Build-A-Bear when I was in college. This was at the same time the My Little Pony collection came out. We had a couple of all brony and furry birthday parties booked, but from what I heard, everyone was pretty nice. Although we did have to do the furry one after work hours, since our managers were afraid people in large animal costumes would tee off parents and freak out the kids. The weirdest one by far, though, was when one of the bronies asked if he could put a .22 round in his Twilight Sparkle. I told him sure, but this is definitely dangerous if it gets too warm. He said he understood, but being a princess is a very dangerous job, and he wanted her to be safe. They asked me to make a hole between the legs so they can stick a marital aid in there. I interviewed for them last year. My hair was a very light blonde, but I had dark roots, so it was easy to tell them it wasn't my natural color. Although it was a very natural color, my interview asked me if I could dye it black because it was unnatural and my parents would throw a fit. I told them it wouldn't be possible because it took me months to get that blonde. She then proceeded to write the number 1 on a piece of paper. "This is what I've graded your interview on a scale of 1 to 5. I didn't say anything and just walked out. All because I didn't want to dye my hair black. Oh, and the hours? 10 hours a week while I went to school. Back when I worked a few years ago, I had a customer come in holding a bag of what looked like at least 10 pacifiers. She spread the pacifiers through the inside of the bear and told her son that they were a big boy now and didn't need the pacifiers anymore, but he'll always be close to them as they're in the bear now. So I guess it wasn't so weird as it was sweet, right? My girlfriend and I were probably the weirdest group of the day at our local Build-A-Bear. We went to Build-A-Bear for her birthday and the promotional live-action Lion King bears were on sale, so we decided to get the ugly live-action Pumbaa bear. For those of you who haven't seen him before, he is an absolute unit with lazy eyes and an evil smile. He knows the sins he's committed and he is not remorseful. Anyway, we dressed him in nothing but a cowboy hat and Marvel boxers, then named him Charles Entertainment Cheese. Oh, and his voice box is also the Super Mario theme. I like to imagine that when I die, the only thing that will be there is just his face in an endless void, while the Super Mario theme plays ominously in the background for eternity. The employees were super helpful, but obviously a little uncomfortable at how hard we were laughing at the creation of our stupid son. I forget to mention that we also went to Claire's and got him a single stud earring because he was a good boy and ate all of his vegetables. One day at Build-A-Bear, my boyfriend found a voice box that someone else had already recorded that just said, "Bush did September 11th. Years later, Harold the Bear is still with us, the voice of an unknown prophet still ringing out. Someone once just wanted 3 empty skin bags. Didn't name them, no stuffing, paid and left and never came back again. I was the weird customer. Years ago, I made a monkey one for my cousin that I put a noisemaker in the crotch that would laugh when you squeezed it. Got some really weird looks from the employee helping me put it together. My grandma was definitely not amused when my cousin opened it in front of the whole family. Do you enter other people's homes as a part of your job? What's the craziest thing you saw? I was on a ride along with a fire department. We responded to smell of smoke in an apartment building. We found the apartment fast enough because the fire alarm was going off inside. We walked in to find this guy as exposed as the day he was born, passed out on the floor in front of the TV with adult movies on way louder than they should be and the remnants of a pizza in the oven. The gentleman in question was very drunk. There were beer cans all over the kitchen and a bottle of liquor on the floor next to him. To wake him up, we actually all left, and the fire chief woke him up in his daily uniform so he didn't think he was being abducted. Lastly, this was in Fargo, North Dakota, about 14 years ago. So this isn't so much weird, but it was the most shocking. I was working with adults with intellectual disabilities that lived in residential homes. It was one of my first weeks on the job, and a coworker was taking me out to a home to show me what she did when she did home reviews. We got to the house, opened the doors, and we were instantly hit with a wall of air smelling like poop. 2 steps in, and it was apparent there was diarrhea on a chair, on the carpets, and random splotches all over. The whole house was in shambles. The fridge was full of moldy food, and I'll never forget picking up the shredded cheese, shaking the bag, and seeing green mold flakes go up and down. Food was spattered all over the cabinets, the beds were stained with pee and poop, and expired canned food was everywhere. The staff there had been neglecting those guys for a long time, and nobody had bothered to check up on them. Service plumber here. At the house of an elderly lady, at least 75 years old, there were undressed pictures of her on the walls and several marital aids all about. It was interesting. My parents have a friend who commissioned a portrait of herself undressed from the waist up. She and her husband hung this giant professional portrait front and center in their living room and have since their children were young. They are interesting people. I do construction sales, so I'm in homes a lot. For me, it's the sheer number of preppers that exist. Walk into a suburban America basement and bam, 24 buckets full of survival food or ammo stuffed into every alcove and rafter. It's definitely not just the ones you expect. I do insulation and I've sprayed some impressive prepper spaces. My favorite was a 1,200 square foot house with a 2,000 square foot basement, concrete ceilings and walls. Part of the area was under his porch. It was a dang bunker. The guy even installed hydraulics on the vault door. In case the house falls on it, I can still open the door. This is really interesting. A couple of bills from The Last of Us in the making. Wild that so many people have the end of civilization as we know it on their minds to such a degree. Can't imagine having the time for that. I used to work for a concrete company, and our mixer trucks would sometimes damage property. Typically, my partner and I did maintenance on the plants, but we'd get sent to job sites to unscrew whatever the drivers did. So while at one house we had to tear up a driveway, replace the culvert, and re-pour the end of the driveway. The first day we were there, all of the old snoopy neighbors were standing around watching, and I had to pee pretty bad. So I asked the homeowner if I could use the bathroom. He said, sure, and led me through his house, past the bathroom, into the bathroom in the master bedroom. Already creeped out by that. Oh, and also I noticed cameras all over the place. Some pointed out of windows, some pointed into the rooms. Creep factor leveled up. He leads me into the bathroom, opens the door, and holds it for me like you would at a store when someone's behind you. I say thanks, and he just stays standing there. I had to walk past him and yank the door closed. While leaving, I notice a bedroom decked out in kids' stuff. This would not normally toss up any flags. Grandkids' room, probably, right? But with all the added creepiness, it just didn't seem normal at all. I told my partner, he laughed and pointed out there was probably cameras in the bathroom. If either of us had to pee after that, we drove down to the gas station. So this was around 15 years ago. We're talking camcorders on tripods, not your cutesy nanny cams. The old guy was single, and this wasn't a very kid-friendly setup as far as foster homes go. Back in the early 90s, I worked for a company that removed old electric water heaters and replaced them with propane-powered ones. Because propane water heaters can possibly spew carbon monoxide, there are state regulations as to where the heaters can and can't be placed. So it was my job to inspect the water heater room and draw up plans for ventilation, if necessary. I showed up at a client's home to inspect the area where he had his water heater to see if we needed to install any vents. When I asked to see his current water heater, he seemed a little uncomfortable and said, "I have something in the room that I forgot to clean up." I followed him to the room, and when he opened the door, the smell of green herb hit me. In this room, he had fishing lines strung up with trimmed plants being dried. If I were to guess, there must have been a couple of pounds of ganja drying up there. He said, "Oh, sorry about that," and I smiled and told him, "No problem, I don't even know what that is." I knew exactly what it was, but I didn't want the guy to get worried about me telling someone else. He offered me some, but I told him, "No thanks, don't know what it is." As I was leaving, he asked me, "You aren't going to tell anyone about the plants, are you?" I asked, "What plants?" The guy smiled and then said, "You sure you don't want some?" I definitely wanted some, but I was still pretty new at the job, so I didn't want to take the chance that accepting Mary J from him would blow up in my face. Before I left, I told him, "Make sure you clear that closet before our guys arrived. They might not be happy about the plants that I didn't see." As a maintenance guy at a large apartment complex, I've seen some stuff. Undressed people, really gross people, but thank God, no dead people. I remember doing an emergency water repair and I had to go into an occupied unit. It was the strangest thing. It was pretty much empty, dirty, but empty. Like nobody lived there. No furniture, not even a bed, just a crappy mattress on the floor. And some clothes scattered around. At least 30 pairs of Nike shoes, all sorts of weird colors. Like this guy had no TV or couch, but had a collection of expensive shoes. All the same size from what I could tell. I don't know, it wasn't as bad as a few of the hoarder units we had. Worked as a furniture delivery guy for a rent-to-own place in Iowa for a couple of years. I saw some absolutely crazy stuff. We were delivering a couch to someone, and when we arrived, there was no answer to our knocking. We called our manager back at the store and explained that nobody was home. He tells us to hang out for a minute while he tries getting in touch with the customer. While we're waiting, we start hearing this weird sort of screeching sound coming from a detached garage. We decide to investigate the house. We turn the corner to the front of the garage and come face to face with the meanest, scariest-looking monkey I've ever seen. It was in the garage, but they had like this wire fence keeping it inside, and the entire garage was its cage, in the middle of BFE, Iowa. I have no idea what kind of monkey it was. It was very large and very angry. Checking fire alarms and testing emergency bedside buttons in a nursing home that are like individual little apartments. Opened the door to the stench of death, and sure enough, lady dead and on the bed and had been there for about 2 days. Yes, the bedside button worked fine. No, nobody was in trouble for her not being found for 2 days. This specific place is very independent. They have their own cars and are free to come and go as they please, and the only time someone comes by is for some sort of maintenance or if they have visitors stop by. This lady had 7 huge birds, parrots and stuff, all without cages and crapping directly onto the floor. It only had the pad that goes under the carpet, and everything had seeped through. It was horrible. She just got a German Shepherd puppy as well, and then proceeded to show me her machete collection. Had a dope classic Airstream in the backyard though. My coworker called animal control on her, but we ended up closing her case shortly after, so not sure whatever happened. I can smell and hear the noise from a 7-parrot household, and it is giving me a headache and making me nauseous. Also, I just had to Google what a classic Airstream is, and assuming I found the right thing, that is one cool campervan trailer. Maybe that's why she was letting animals destroy her house. I worked as a delivery driver for a Deliver Anything company in the early 2000s. At the time, it was a very novel but ultimately unsustainable idea for a business. We had a lot of regular weirdos. One night, one of those weirdos ordered about $30 worth of candles from the dollar store. This job really brought to the forefront the disconnects that exist in us as consumers. So of course, initially, I'd gotten the wrong kind of candles for the weirdo. He showed me what he wanted at his apartment door. Luckily, the store was literally a couple of blocks away, so I didn't have to waste much time because I wasn't being paid hourly. "Come in," is what I was greeted with when I returned, which is never something I'm particularly happy about as a delivery person. I see what my rational brain tells me as a pile of laundry on a coffee table in front of a filthy couch. But it's not that, it's a 3-foot-tall wax pile. I'd bought candles in jars the first time, and I could definitely see why those wouldn't work for our gentleman. He needed freestanding candles so he could just plop one down and light it to continue building his wax mountain, which was starting to spill onto the floor. A less weird but more awkward experience I had with this man was him literally falling asleep mid-signature for his Burger King. A plane. This guy was refurbishing a light aircraft in his lounge. It was only the fuselage, the wings were outside. That certainly was the weirdest. I mean, that's actually rad, but weird that he did it in his lounge instead of outside under a tent or in a garage or something. On one occasion, we were demolishing a kitchen for a remodel and we found, sealed inside the wall, 5 empty beers and 1 full one. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I used to install smoke alarms for the hearing impaired, 50% elderly and 50% deaf, all over the state of Oklahoma. I'd get addresses for the installations the week before and plan routes accordingly, meaning I'd just put the addresses into Google and check everything out on Earth and map views. This place I'm thinking of was in the middle of nowhere, which is saying something considering the entire state of Oklahoma is in the middle of nowhere. When my ASL interpreter and I made the trip, we had to ramp our minivan over the nearly washed-out bridge, bounce down a forest road, and choose which of 3 broken trailers these people were using as a shelter. Looking back, we really should have just called it before ramping the bridge. Once there, we met the people and they explained, in ASL through my interpreter, that they'd had a tornado rip through their home that ended up sparking a fire somehow, and that explanation never made it through translation. Since then, they'd decided to be more fire safety conscious, which I applaud, but their home had holes in the roof the size of people. One wall was just a tapestry of duct-taped trash bags. I didn't feel right just installing fancy smoke alarms when they clearly needed much more help, but there wasn't anything I could do, really. So I'm doing the only thing I can do, installing the smoke alarms and explaining basic fire safety, teaching them to use their bed-shaking devices. These people were deaf. When I started to explain that they should exit the home without stopping to grab anything valuable, including pets, and they stopped me and explained that their pet is very valuable, as in it had monetary value. I'm not one to pry, so I took this at face value and reiterated the importance of leaving the home immediately if it's on fire, especially because it's a trailer home. They had a long, silent conversation with my interpreter, during which she looked more and more concerned. The occupants go into a room that I hadn't entered yet and emerged with a frickin' bald eagle on a leash. That's illegal, guys. I had a neighbor who offered me money to clean her apartment. She had mental health issues and got some kind of subsidy from the county for home assistance, which she didn't like, but she had an inspection coming up for continuing her other benefits, so I walked in and there were dishes everywhere, glasses with dried stuff in the bottom, pizza boxes that smelled of old cheese and stacks, ashtrays piled so high they were pyramids of butts, beer cans and bottles scattered. Went into the kitchen and both sinks were piled up past the faucet. One side had water in it that was covered in a white film. The kitchen trash had overflowed to the floor and had flies buzzing around it. Gross, but I needed the money, so I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. After I got the dishes under control, I moved on to the stove and oven. When I opened the door, the entire bottom of the oven was crawling with maggots. The wave of smell was enough to knock me on my butt, and I ran out gagging. I went home, got a mask on, went back, and finished cleaning up. I still can't figure out what she did to that oven. There was no food inside, and it looked like it had never been used. Not exactly weird, but cool. Knocked on the door and didn't get a response. The door was unlocked, so I let myself in to find a 90-year-old woman in her dressing gown headbanging to Led Zeppelin. I was an estate agent, a realtor for rental properties, and I had a few wild moments. The top two were when I'd been okayed by a member of a male couple to let myself in for a flat viewing one Saturday morning, but he must have forgotten to tell his partner, because when I opened the door to the bedroom with my heterosexual middle-aged potential buyers, we found one of the tenants having a vigorous affair against the wall without a stitch on them and only 5 feet away. Still no idea how we didn't hear them before we opened the door. The other one was similar, but I was there to take photos, and the tenant, an elderly, overweight woman, forgot I was coming, so guess who I found in the bath? I'm trying to think, if I really were set on buying a place, would I be completely put off by the visual of someone desecrating their marital vows against the wall? You know what? I can't put my finger on why, but I think I wouldn't be able to see the place the same way afterwards. I used to be a house painter. One weekend I was working with my female coworker at a house for a woman and her toddler daughter. The daughter was chatty and cute, mostly sat on the couch watching TV, but would talk to us while we worked. I was on my knees painting some trim with my back to the daughter when she said,
Look at me.
I turned around and saw her on the couch wrapped in a blanket. She opened the blanket and said, I'm not wearing any clothes. I immediately turned back around and said loudly, I don't need to see that. From the other room, her mum yelled out, Is she taking her clothes off again? At the end of the day, we were laughing about it with the mother, and I said, she's going to be really popular when she gets older. Luckily, the mother took that joke well. I worked for Pizza Hut many years ago. I had to deliver to a house that was as normal as can be on the outside. I knocked on the door, and a guy was wearing only silk boxers when he answered. He was slightly overweight, but looked like he was smuggling a frickin' baseball bat in his boxers. He was casual as heck and asked me to step inside for a second as he had to go get his wallet. I took one step inside and this extremely hot lady came around the corner. She was obviously not wearing a bra and her robe was barely closed. One of her steps forward flapped open her robe enough to know that she'd shaved her down below area. I looked behind her and you could see a video camera set up on a tripod, so it was obvious what they were doing. The guy handed me the money with a good-sized tip, no pun intended, and tells me that he appreciated me bringing their food. I said, no problem. Have fun doing what you're doing, and if you need a cameraman, let me know. I don't even remember thinking the last part until it was coming out of my mouth. He just kind of laughed and said, maybe next time, my dude. The girl just laughed and I left. Damn the bad luck. Honestly, I don't know what I would have done if they said, yeah, let's do this. I was in the bathroom. I thought I saw a giant pink marital aid. A closer look revealed that it was soap shaped like a man's junk. Years ago, I used to deliver and set up furniture of all sorts. Not that weird, but I used to find vibrating toys and marital aids under mattresses all the fricking time. I'd stand the mattress up against the wall and they'd be laid out there. I'd simply tell the homeowner, I've got to grab some tools from the truck. If there's anything you need to clean up, now is the time to do it. I'd come back in and the adult toys would be gone. Every time, and they'd never say a word about it. It wasn't a big deal, I just didn't want to handle them if the homeowner was home. They'd be a little embarrassed. Like no eye contact or red cheeks, but I'd like to think I handled it as professionally as possible, given the fact that I was 17 to 20 years old. Similar, I was tasked with entering every room in a small hotel to verify dimensions for an architectural project. One room, 2 men who looked like they were from the 80s, clearly doing some sort of business. Computers, printers, filing cabinets. But there was also some serious adult flicks on the TV, like hardcore stuff, and it was just background noise. So weird. When I did pest control, I had a house I serviced where 3 women who took their clothes off for money lived. They had poles all over the place and so much glitter everywhere. But they always hooked me up with some really good coffee that one of them got sent back from home. Aside from that, I found a body once. That probably wins it for stuff I wasn't expecting. Wasn't inside their home, but outside. I was on hurricane relief in the mountains of New York. We had to go and supply water to this guy whose house was deep in the woods. His property was surrounded by trees, and hanging from those trees were a bunch of colored baby dolls from nooses. There was a wooden archway as you approached his house that said "Arbeit macht frei," which means work sets you free. That slogan was the same one used in the most famous of the infamous and evil camps of the Third Reich. I had to work in a government housing block at Main and Hastings in Vancouver. I was cutting a hole in a ceiling while someone was laying a dirty mattress right beside the ladder, injecting smack. The person was so screwed up that he didn't even notice all of the drywall dust I was spilling on him. Male anatomy. Eggplants everywhere. Sculptures and artworks of sausages, literally about 1,000, like a hoarder-type situation. I was doing their cable, and you really couldn't avoid contact with a trouser monster or two. It was dark in there from the skyscraper-sized stacks of male members blocking out the light. Years ago, I drove a tow truck at night, putting myself through college. Got a call to go and see this woman's car. I pull up, and she's in the car and won't get out. I ask her, "Mom, please get out so I can safely tow your vehicle without you in it." She said, "That's never going to happen." I said, "It's an insurance violation for me to let you ride in your car." It was late, so I said, "Screw it. Mom, please move to the passenger seat so I can put your car in neutral and steer it up onto the flatbed." She complies. I get in the car and she says, "I can't leave them alone in here." And I'm like, "Who?" I turn around and there's, no joke, 30 cats in the back seat of this old station wagon. Every single one of them in some sort of Halloween costume. The car smelled worse than anything I've ever encountered in my entire life. I guess this counts as a home since the crazy cat lady was living in her car. Oh dear. Well, color me surprised that there wasn't just the most wild ongoing feline melee 24/7 in that place. And I know you said you weren't joking, but more than 30? In a car? What on earth? I do property maintenance. One guy has been having problems with his heater recently. The breakers are in the closet on the wall. I've gone in a few times and noticed this huge stack covered by a big blue blanket. The other day I got curious and I took a peek in. It was a huge collection of adult magazines. It wasn't just one stack either. There were 2 stacks. I'm basically 6 foot tall, and these came up to my chin. I've seen all kinds of crappy and nasty apartments, but this one had me chuckling all day. I do property management for multimillionaires, one of whom has a plaque in her house from when she sold her shares in a company in excess of 50 million. It's not as strange as some of the comments here, but it always creeped me out. And her house is extremely nice, right on the beach, but it's a pretty old house. Inside, everything is pretty old, from the furniture to the wallpaper. She has an abundance of creepy pictures dating back to the 1800s on her walls, on her tables, and even her cup holders have creepy-looking people on the bottom, where you'd put your cup. I imagine it's all old pictures of her family, but it's really bizarre. She also has really old dolls that look creepy as hell, some of them resembling Annabelle from the movie. She probably has 3 or 4 of those in every room in her 5,000+ square foot house. I hate going there. What did that weird kid in your school end up doing that you'll never forget? He had a book where he'd write in people that had wronged him. I got put in for smelling like soap. She Naruto ran everywhere and told everyone her dad was Harry Potter at age 12, and most memorably came to school bawling her eyes out because she said she had laid an egg and her parents had eaten it for breakfast. She hissed at people in the hallways and then bit somebody. Said girl went to my middle school in Chandler, Arizona. It seems like every school has a hisser, but she didn't think she was a snake, she was a cat girl. School bell rings, playground doors open, and the weird kid walks directly to the center and just screams for a full minute. I thought it was weird then, but now I can relate. Ate a sheep eye that we were supposed to be dissecting in science class. Man, oh man. Aren't those things full of inedible, probably toxic preservatives? Aye, but he lived to tell the tale. Ended up in a mental institution because his parents bought him a new mattress, and while removing the old one, they found multiple mason jars full of blood. No exaggeration, it was like 2 gallons. There was a police investigation, and it turns out it was all his blood, and his only answer as to why was, "Just in case." This girl just decided she wanted to be pregnant. She proceeded to ask probably half the people in our high school if they'd impregnate her, and then when that didn't work, she bought a Ziploc bag and asked for guys to splooge in it. Everyone called her the Splooge Bank after that, and I honestly can't even remember her real name. Yeah, there were a few girls in my school who were really determined to get preggo. Several of them actually did. They'd be homeschooled once they started showing, but one girl kept coming to school right up to her due date. She was so proud of herself. She kept telling people to put their hands on her belly and feel the baby moving around. She refused to name a dad. Most of us figured it was the football team. Ate styrofoam and then visibly lied about it and denied when someone pointed it out. Bits of styrofoam came out of his mouth. Oh boy. What do you do about this? I mean, other than calling the medical services, I mean in the long term, because they clearly knew it was bad to eat, otherwise they probably wouldn't have lied about it. Hopefully they lived and the resulting stomachache educated them against any future culinary endeavors like this. I had someone similar eat glue sticks in my first high school. In high school, I was talking to this girl and she'd been eating this cheese bread. When she finished it, she proceeded to just eat the napkin the cheese bread had been wrapped in. Why? Because it tasted like cheese bread. I was freaked out and I walked away. Went to a large school, like 3,000 students. If anybody said anything to the weird kid that he didn't like, he'd stare at you and then just recite your name and address. It was a little creepy. Also, a little impressive, honestly. A girl once took out her glass eye and threw it at our French teacher. "Rebecca, eyes on me when I'm teaching the lesson," is what I hoped the teacher said before that happened. Robbed a gas station dressed as a ninja armed with a katana. Stole cash from the register, all the cigarettes he could carry, and a bunch of lottery tickets. He then fled across state lines with a 17-year-old girl. He was 19. Wasn't a great result for him. Never knew whether I was supposed to be impressed, disgusted, or have an existential crisis. 7th grade. The guy didn't have a pen or pencil for the test, and the teacher wouldn't give him one. "You need to be more prepared," etc., etc. So the guy took out a paperclip, straightened it out, shanked himself, and then started doing the test using his blood as ink. He was quickly sent to the nurse's office. It was kind of a sad situation. The teacher shouldn't have done that, and I think the student was picked on a lot and wasn't very stable in the first place. There was this really mentally messed up kid I could probably write a book about. He went through a phase where he was obsessed with JFK. He printed out pictures of him and taped them to everything, his binder, truck, locker, everything. I don't know what happened to him, but later that year, all of those pictures changed to pictures of the leader of the Third Reich. He referred to this as the time that the devil overtook him with evil. He did the same crap with William Shatner and a teacher at our school, but the bizarre satanic Führer observation takes the cake. He was also banned from the computers because the library lady caught him spanking the hog to some naughty movies in there. At an all-school assembly during my freshman year, a motivational speaker posed an easy rhetorical question to the crowd, and the weird kid in my grade unnecessarily shouted out the answer to every bored person's sudden delight. For some reason, I guess trying to maintain his authority, the speaker asked our weird kid, "What's your name, son?" And without pause, a weird kid stood up from his chair and loudly proclaimed, "My name is Booger." This announcement was met with raucous applause and laughter from the entire student body. It was gloriously random and weird. From then on, the weird kid was known only as Booger in our small town. I'll admit that it did fit him better than Sean, and he frickin' owned that name until graduation. There was this huge guy, we're talking tall and wide, in our classes. To support his impressive body, he ate a lot. He'd bring an entire roll of cookies, we're talking like 20, and stack them on one side of his desk. Then he would take a bite out of cookie number 1 and put it on the other side of his desk. Then he'd take one bite out of the next cookie and place that one on top of cookie number 1. He'd go through the whole stack until all the cookies were partially eaten and in a neat stack on the other side of his desk. Then he'd do it again, take one bite off the top cookie and place that in the original side of the desk, bite the next cookie, etc., etc. After maybe 15 minutes of biting and snacking, the whole stack would be gone. Now, we weren't even supposed to eat in class, but he always got away with it somehow. Our weird kid and his girlfriend made a list of people in the school they wanted to commit a number of heinous crimes against. That got investigated real quick, but I don't know what the actual punishment was that they got. They dressed like the Queen of England, with the hair and shoes and everything, from elementary to middle school. Then they dressed like a doll for a year and tried to hook up with everyone, got kicked off stage at a talent show for doing a burlesque routine, and then would work her bedroom prowess into every oral report she had to do. And her last year she came to school 2 times in just a miniskirt and bra. I didn't know her personally at all, but I've kind of suspected she might have had some really messed up stuff going on at home. So there was this guy at our school when I was a freshman that everybody called Wolfman, who was weird in all the wrong ways. He claimed to have superpowers, teleportation, Dragon Ball Z like energy creation and whatnot. All the girls said he'd just stare at them if they had class with him. He hung around us freshmen and did his best to flirt with the girls. For an example of his flirting, he once told a girl that while astral projecting, he saw her face on Jupiter. Needless to say, the girls stayed away from him. He graduated though, and his brother started at the school. Now, Wolfman wasn't a tall guy by any stretch of the imagination, maybe 5 feet at most, but his brother was a good foot shorter than him. He looked like he belonged in 3rd grade, and he never got any taller. It didn't help that he always wore a child's Goosebumps jacket, and that made people start calling him Goosebumps. He was even more convinced of his powers than his brother, but at least he was less overtly creepy. But that's all he really had going for him. One memorable day, I was in math class and he started shaking violently. People ignored him, so he started flapping his arms around. Wondering if this was an actual seizure, the girl next to him put her hand on him and asked if he was okay, and he growled back,
"Oh, take your hand off me. This power is too much to contain."
She started yelling at him for faking a seizure, and he went back to his normal death stare while grumbling about his powers. One girl in my grade, at high school, so 4 years from age 12 through 16, filled a vial with her own blood and wore it around her neck. She also wore cat ears and a tail to school and would chase people around meowing and hissing and trying to scratch them. She was frickin' fast too, especially when she'd climb up the stairs on all fours, seriously frickin' fast. Like, you'd better get your skates on or she's gonna catch you fast. No, she was not hot. In hindsight, maybe some psychological issues at play, but she wasn't ever part of the special needs program, just a regular student like the rest of us, I guess. And yes, I realized she very likely had an issue that was undiagnosed at the time. I hope she got the help she needed. I have no idea what happened to this young lady after high school. Vanished without a trace. Did some Googling and Facebook stalking, but no dice. During my 6th grade graduation, our class sang a song. Weird kid was standing next to me on stage and suddenly just projectile chucks up and some of it landed on my shoes. Impressively, he still kept singing while I stood there wide-mouthed in horror and disbelief. I'll never forget all the gasps from the crowd. Our kid could throw up on demand.
Who was demanding this?
You know, as gross as it seems to most of us, I know that if you were in any level of school, there would always be at least one kid who requested this trick on occasion. Maybe just because somebody else didn't believe that this was a thing. But yeah, if you could pull this trick in high school, you would for sure have an audience. Don't go getting ideas though, kids, it's the bad sort of attention. Ran around the hallways making pterodactyl noises with his arms raised up behind him like he was a swimming butterfly? I'm so glad other schools had kids making pterodactyl noises. The collective school experience just doesn't disappoint. I'm from a small town. There was this kid who was a year older, but he was so weird that even the younger kids would pick on him. I didn't really know him, but I put him in the weird but harmless category. He graduated and then decided to rob the local taco time with a shotty. Well, it is a small town. The kids working at the taco time all knew him, and pretty much all the customers in the taco time knew him as well. He got 2 years. A few days before a pep assembly, someone anonymously posted signs all over school that said, "The croc is coming." And obviously I've added an R to that word. Teachers and school administrators were obviously concerned, but clueless. Then they smuggled a live rooster into the assembly, and partway through the opening speech at the assembly, he whipped it out over his head and it went bananas. The entire gym full of kids stood up and started chanting, "Croc! Croc! Croc!" He was not seen at school for a few days afterwards. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. A new lad in my primary school pretended that his real voice was a deep Scottish accent. At some point, he found a piece of broken glass and used it to slice my friend for some reason, and then we never saw him again. And for clarification, the person he sliced was a girl, and she came back to school after going to the hospital. The weird kid was never seen again. He didn't always use the deep Scottish voice. Usually he'd have a normal-sounding voice from what I remember, but then he'd say to us quietly, "This isn't my real voice. My real voice sounds like this," kind of thing. Ours once got caught cranking one out under his desk. I borrowed his phone in like 8th grade as a last resort to look up my math homework. As soon as I type in the P in problem set, I was bombarded with Pornhub results. The guy didn't even use incognito. In a massive snoop move, I just took a glance at his history and found out that he watched porn on his phone almost all day, morning, afternoon, and evening. Another kid got every girl in our grade to sign a contract before he moved in 3rd grade, saying that if he ever returned, they'd owe him 1 date. This motherfricker came back in 11th grade, to every girl's dismay, but forgot about the contracts. Bonus features, there was another kid who got in trouble for trying to start a fire in the toilet, unsuccessfully, of course. The next week he bought supplies and actually did it. Got expelled right there. 8th grade. Then there was another kid who decided, in the same bathroom, that he'd find a guy peeing in a urinal and then pee on him to assert dominance. He wasn't expelled. That was 7th grade. Another kid in 12th grade made a Fortnite joke on Facebook about wanting to shoot his friend with a shotty before acquiring a chug jug. Some mum took this literally instead of the video game way and reported a shooting threat to the high school. I'm pretty sure he went to a party because his neighbor let our town Facebook group know that he'd left the house around the time the police were called. There was a whole group of people online calling for a manhunt. He moved away. Then there was one who was a senior when I was a freshman. We were friends adjacent in gym. One day in the locker room, he told me that he did some substances while drunk the night before, and his friends shoved a peanut butter jar in his butt. However, he couldn't get it out. You could see the flat part of the lid under his boxers. I have no idea how he managed to make it through a school day like that. After school, he melted butter and poured it into his crevice, and then squeezed out a massive number 2, pulling the jar out in the process. Definitely thought twice before talking to him again, but we were a killer handball team. I met his mum at the hospital. He's in a mediocre black metal band now. And finally, there was also one kid who I almost killed. It was after nighttime marching band practice last year. I had a car full of children to drive home, and I managed to wrangle everyone into the car by 10:30 p.m. I was getting ready to drive out of the lot when I noticed an extra speed bump that I didn't remember from before. I slammed the brakes down before I hit it and got out to inspect, since I didn't believe that someone had built a bump in the last 4 hours. Lo and behold, it's a body. This weird kid decided to lie down, face first, in black clothes on black asphalt in the black night. I nudged him with my foot and asked him if he was okay. He's mad and tells me I interrupted his nap, and then walks home. I was a couple of inches from ending this guy's life. They would chew the gum stuck under the tables. He pulled down his pants in the middle of a public bathroom and span in a circle while spraying pee everywhere and shouting, "Around the world!" Was in the band during some downtime. Some guy kicks off his shoes and socks and then bites the ends of his toenails off. Most of the class casually migrated towards the other side of the room. He spilled his fruit juice on his desk, then wiped it with his shirt's sleeve and then sucked the juice out of said fabric.
Screw you, I was thirsty.
Cut his own hair while in class and mentioned that he'd conquer the world with a revolver. Ended up setting fire to his house and was sent to a mental asylum. Pretty mild stuff. They thrusted against my desk for a solid minute while maintaining eye contact with me and then said, "Thanks," and just walked away. By the way, I'm a guy. This was 15 years ago on my first day at this new school, and I was just eating lunch at my desk, and this guy just walked up and went to town. No context, no introduction, nothing. Didn't even buy me dinner first, just wham bam, thank you desk. Poured his juice on a table at lunch and suction cupped his mouth over it and inhaled it like a Hoover when you put it directly onto the hard floor. This guy is a lawyer now. Well, nothing surprising there to be honest. I could see Harvey Specter slurping up a juice box from his desk between million-dollar lawsuits. And by the way, on a serious note, this is a good reminder that no matter how far people see you go in your weird stage in school, you can always bounce back. The weird kid in our school was part of our friendship group, so 15 years or more later, we still give him crap about it. During assembly one afternoon, a few weeks from ball or prom, he went up on stage while our entire year was filling into the auditorium and taking our seats. He was part of the AV club. Surprise! So his responsibility was making sure the microphones worked, so nobody questioned why he was up there tinkering with the mic. Anyway, 90% of our year has come in at this point when he starts singing Jumper by Third Eye Blind over a karaoke version of the song that he found on LimeWire, and he's changed the "my friend" part of the chorus to the name of the girl he wants to ask out to prom. He gets about halfway through the song before one of the teachers realizes it isn't a joke and gets up on stage to drag him out. Everyone's just sitting there going, what the frick? Half the kids don't know the song, and the other half is wondering why he chose it to ask somebody out. Turns out the girl he was asking wasn't even in the auditorium yet, so didn't hear his little number. He got a detention for a week for being disruptive, but since then we just called him Jumper as a joke. But then it stuck, and I don't think anyone in our friend group has used his name since then. Even during his wedding, you could tell who he went to school with since they'd ask where Jumper or Big J was. The albino kid in school. He'd take off running down the hallway with one hand straight out in front of him and yell, "White lightning!" He was weird, but everyone liked him. The weird kid, Dan, was obsessed with one cute girl, Casey, for several years. She rejected him for several years. On the bus to a field trip, I sat next to him and he was drawing. I glanced over and he was drawing Casey falling off a cliff onto a patch of spikes below. Years later in middle school, he also got really angry and threw a desk across the room in English. Not a small desk either. One of those ones that's a chair with a desk attached kinda hybrid. Just frickin' yeeted it across the room. Was frickin' terrified. There's a whole litany of things he did, but those ones stand out to me. One time, some kid smeared number 2 on the walls of the restroom, but nobody found out who did it. Also, for those of you who are assuming it was me, it wouldn't be possible since I stopped using school restrooms to go number 2 since 4th grade, and this happened 2 years ago when I was in 7th grade. I don't even know how the inside of that restroom looks like. We were getting DNA samples in biology. Most of the class used spit, but he tried to squeeze milk out of his chest. Yes, he. This was when we were 14 to 15. This guy shanked me with a number 2 pencil in my collarbone area. I went to the hospital, but they said I was fine. My stepdad said I'd do anything to get out of school. Screw both those guys. My brother is a high school teacher, and he once texted me that he caught a kid cutting his downstairs hair in class. There was another kid, not even from his class, who randomly ran into the classroom, took some binders out of a bookcase and started jumping up and down on them. Then he ran out of the classroom again. I don't know, I'm pretty sure I was the weird kid. She barked at people and tried to scratch behind her ears and sniffed people's butts at recess. She was 14. Apparently, he put a teaspoon up his butt in assembly. This is going to sound ridiculous, but during my senior year of high school, somebody took a huge, and I mean inhumanly huge, number 2 in one of the girls' bathroom toilets that was far too big to be flushed away. Some kid mentioned seeing it, and in no time, somehow the entire school was made aware and gathered around the bathroom trying to get a look at this monstrosity. Picture, if you can, more than 50 high school kids skipping classes just to try to squeeze into a small women's bathroom to stare in awe at an infamous mound. The crowd got so big and unruly that the administration finally caught on and banned people from that particular hallway for the rest of the day under threat of suspension. I like to believe that all of us were that weird kid on that day. He did the deed with a duck, allegedly. You know, I didn't see him at school after that, if I'm remembering correctly. He gave me a handful of blue Pop Rocks. He was actually really sweet. In 4th grade, a girl ate a whole mechanical pencil just next to me. She regularly ate whole sheets of paper and erasers. The pencil really sticks out in my mind, though. To clarify, yes, it was the entire mechanical pencil. She took it apart piece by piece and just kinda crunched all the big parts like a candy bar. This girl also thought she was a horse and would gallop, neigh, and fight anyone who said she wasn't. So this was pretty much expected by the time she was my desk partner. He was a genius, scored in the top of the class all the time. One day he called a friend of mine and said, "Hey, what are you doing this afternoon? Do you want to come here so we can design a time travel machine?" Who knows when he is now? I was in economics class and this quiet Asian kid was on his laptop. The head of the school's IT storms into the classroom and starts yelling at him along the lines of, "You've messed up the whole network," drags him out of the class, and we never saw that kid again. Peed his pants on the last day. He was so close, he nearly got away as a normie. In grade 8, this kid would bring a bar of soap with a hole in it and just do the deed with it in class. We'd whisper to him, "Psst, hey, how was it?" And he'd give us a grin and a thumbs up while we giggled. That was 32 years ago. Recently found out he's a big-shot neurosurgeon in England somewhere. Who would have thought? What caused a decades-long, stable marriage to end out of nowhere? Had to watch my parents go through the paperwork to get divorced after my dad had a massive stroke and was forced to retire. It was the only way for them to keep the money from his pension and maintain his health insurance coverage. My parents got a divorce of convenience so that Pops could make the mortgage payments and get his insulin. Thankfully, my parents' insurance agent is a close friend and found every possible form and loophole so that they could stay in the house together. It took almost 2 years to get everything settled. I'll never forget my dad's statement after it was all done. "The church says we're still married, and that's what matters to us. At least now your mother can still get her hearing aids and pay the mortgage if something happens to me. I was so disgusted with it all. I never forgave my dad's union for it, and we now make sure someone from our family shows up to their annual open meeting when they discuss the health insurance plan to shame them in explicit detail with how the board screws over the roughnecks. You know, my husband tried to kill me, which I feel is impolite. 23 years. I'd lied to her several times over the years and she always forgave me. The last time, I lied to her about accruing a severe amount of debt due to a gambling addiction. I think she might have forgiven the lie, but she couldn't forgive the addiction and the chance that I'd start gambling again. I started attending Gamblers Anonymous after I told her, but it was too little too late. On the plus side, I haven't gambled for almost 3 years now. It was a struggle at first, but it gets easier as long as I take it one day at a time. I've made some amazing friends in my local recovery community, and I run a meeting once a week to help others that are suffering. There's a guy in my town that everyone knows about because he owns this huge mansion in a middle-class neighborhood. Apparently, he was married to a woman for a long time, but she left him, calling him a loser because his business hadn't taken off yet. After she left him, his business finally took off. He sells medical equipment to hospitals, and he became FU levels of rich in a few years. The reason he built the mansion in that neighborhood was because that's where she lives, so she has to drive by the mansion on her way to work every day. The script that I'm gathering people's answers for after this one that I'm currently writing is about people's acts of petty revenge, and for a second there I wasn't sure if I'd pulled from the wrong group of comments. This is brilliantly jerky. And if they really were married for 10 or more years with her patiently waiting before it came together for him before finally throwing in the towel, this must have been incredibly frustrating. My mum filed for divorce after 27 years with my dad. Us kids were out of the house, and I think she had a midlife crisis that if she decided to do nothing, then that's how she'd die. In that house, doing nothing but things that make the days go by faster. I do believe an old high school flame helped her make the decision as well. At first I was hurt, but as I get older now, I completely get why. My dad prefers routine over excitement and had a habit of saving us poor when we didn't need to. At first it was a financial requirement, and then it became an obsession for him. My mum wanted to travel and experience new things in her later years, and she deserves that. My dad deserves to live how he wants to as well. Today I see 2 happier people, and that makes me happy. My parents got divorced after 22 years of marriage. They were never in love and didn't even like each other. They had me and then my sister a few years later and wanted to stay together for the kids. 12 years after I was born, they had my brother, and that kept the cycle going. I wish I could say that they're happy now, but they still like to cause trouble for each other. We're due our first child soon, and they're going to have to figure out how to be grandparents together. Thankfully, I'm 1,500 miles from them, so it won't be a headache very often. I worked at a law firm that only practiced family law, so we're talking divorces, child custody, wills, and estates. At one time, we had like 8 clients getting divorced after 20-plus years of marriage, and they were all high-ranking military men whose wives came out of the closet after all of their kids had grown up and moved out of the house, and these guys were getting ready to retire. I thought it was so weird, but I guess for whatever reason, the women thought that their duties to their husbands and families were coming to an end, and they wanted to live for themselves. I guess I know why they couldn't come out 30 years ago. It was a different time, but I was curious why they were all attracted to military guys. I assume maybe because it meant their husbands would be away for years at a time during their service? I think it depends more on how old the women were when they were first married. Military people often tend to marry young and quickly. You don't know yourself when you're young. 20 years will do that to you. My parents split up after nearly 30 years. My dad was a butthole my entire life, so when they finally divorced, I was 18, and there was no surprise. He had been cheating for years, and I think he was the one who finally asked for it. I think my mum stayed because she couldn't afford to start over. She spent her life putting my dad through school and wasn't educated herself. She had no family or anyone who could help her either. There were definitely some confidence issues on her part as well. My parents divorced when I was 12. They thought I'd be devastated, but the only thing I could say was, "Thank God, what took you so long?" I don't think I could have endured it 6 more years. My husband began surreptitiously going to exotic dance clubs. He stole about $200 a week from various accounts and a business that I owned to fund those activities. He lost his job because he went there so often at lunch and would just stay. We had young kids, so I stayed after he got some therapy. He was never honest with the therapist. About a year ago, I learned he was doing it again. Plus, texting the exotic dancers. My youngest kid graduates high school this year. I've done what's best for everyone else for 20 years now. This September was 21 years, and I don't anticipate having a 22nd anniversary. It's really scary to think of being alone. I don't hate him, I feel sorry for him. I know he'll feel very sad and lonely when I'm gone, but being near him feels like having my soul ripped from my body every day. Therapy changed my mind. After more than a decade of being miserable, I finally got help. When I was able to really talk about my marriage was when I finally realized I needed to get the F out. At the end of the day, I stayed in a crappy marriage because the thought of being alone scared me. Through therapy, I was clued into how many wonderfully supportive friends and family members I had if I just reached out to them. I wasn't going to be in a relationship anymore, but I wasn't alone either. Not myself, but my parents. They were married for 22 years when they separated, 24 years by the time the divorce was final. From the perspective of a child in the situation, there's no way that they were happy together. There was hardly ever a quiet moment in the house because of my father's temper, but my mother knew how to serve it back too. However, the final straw was more of a chain of events. My father had a very rigid view of the family. Man works, woman stays home, cares for the home and the children. When I was in high school, my father got injured at work and needed surgery. He worked a physically demanding job and would be out for 6 months. My mother, knowing that we were already falling behind on the vehicle and house payments, decided to find part-time employment. She worked while the kids were in school. It was still important to her to see her kids get on the bus and be there when they got home. My father immediately believed that she was cheating on him. He installed a tracker and tape recorder in her car. He showed up at her workplace and caused a scene multiple times. He interrogated her co-workers. He spent most of the time at the house drinking. This was not an equal partnership, and it never really was. You should have seen how hurt he acted when my mum finally asked for a divorce. But he rebounded real quick, let me tell you. All he had to do was tell some woman on Plenty of Fish his sob story, and he moved right into her house. He spent a couple of years treating her and her children horribly before she kicked him out as well. Only took him a couple of weeks in a hotel to find another woman to let him move in. What a charmer. Nasty controlling dirtbag aside, I'm mainly mind-blown that Plenty of Fish was surviving as a dating app when that comment was written in 2019. I only had it for a while when I had my garbage Windows phone before Tinder finally became available on that, and Plenty of Fish was dead in the water like a decade ago. Maybe that's why Rebound number 1 was so starved for choice in his story. This video is not sponsored by Plenty of Fish. That last guy sounds like my grandpa, except when he started drinking and accusing grandma of cheating, he beat the crap out of her. It all backfired one day though. Grandpa had 7 sons, all really good wrestlers and boxers, because Grandpa thought men should know how to fight. One day they ganged up on Grandpa. They were between 8 and 17 and they beat the crap out of him. They tied him to a tree and left him outside all night. Then they told him they'd kill him if he ever drank or hit Grandma again. It's crazy to me because I only ever got to meet the nice version of Grandpa who didn't drink. Parents divorced after 25 years when my mum had what we thought at the time was a midlife crisis. She told my dad by draining $3,000 from the joint checking account to fund her divorce lawyer. 6 years later, they were officially divorced since she blew through that money on different lawyers that kept firing her as a client. We later ruled out midlife crisis when her behavior started to become more odd, erratic, and paranoid. She was in her early 50s when this behavior started. Now we, by whom I mean myself and my sister-in-law, both of whom have psychology experience, think that she has late-onset bipolar, and I say think since we can't get her officially diagnosed since she believes nothing is wrong with her. She lives in New York and it's super hard to commit someone there unless they're a danger to themselves or other people. And she's not dangerous, she just can't hold down a job and lives in her car due to her own insubordinate, sporadic paranoid behavior. But of course she blames everyone else. No, she's not a narcissist, she's just mentally ill, since she was never like this when we were growing up. She was very selfless and caring when she was younger. We were together 20 years, married for 15. We started as high school sweethearts, but we eventually realized that we weren't the same people we were when we fell in love. We also realized that that wasn't going to change. We decided that the best way for everyone to be happy for the rest of our lives was to end it on peaceful terms before we were both 70 and resentful of each other for trapping each other in an unhappy marriage for more than 40 years. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I've been married for 20 years and we are on the edge. The answer is that life just changes you. When you start out the relationship, it's its own thing. It's cultivated and it grows. Then over the years, you add some children and full-time jobs, and there's less to cultivate, or nothing. You end up becoming life partners to run the household, and you wonder why you're even together. Since there are no good times, all that's left are the arguments and bad times. This is all normal, and on top of that, you're both going through the personal struggles of living. To be honest, staying married is tougher than most people think in an age without divorce social stigma. The kids do keep you together, hoping that somehow you can rekindle something that once existed. And this is in a situation with two good people trying to do the right thing. We're not even talking about a toxic situation where people are mistreating each other. My dad filed for divorce after 25 years of marriage. My mum was shell-shocked. My dad was absolutely miserable, but the signs of a failed marriage were always present. Dad was very emotional and is quick to anger. He's never really handled failure very effectively and would be mad instead of constructive. My mum is very family-oriented and was adamant that we never move farther than 40 miles from Chicago. Heck, when I was going away to college, she bawled to my dad to force me to go to a school closer to home. In a way, I think my dad resented my mum for never letting him travel or get away from Chicago. It also doesn't help that I'm fairly certain my mum became undiagnosed depressed once her mum died. All she'd do was her bare minimum at her job as a school bus driver, then come home and sleep, finish her route for the day, cook a hamburger helper meal for the family, and then play Angry Birds on her iPad. It's really weird seeing your parents divorce in your 20s. You're adult enough to speak candidly, and neither of them likes what you have to say about them during or after the fact. The silver lining out of it is my sisters and I know how not to behave in a relationship. We were together for 20 years, but only married for 13 of them. Our interests just diverged over the years. I got more into music and art and wanted to go to festivals and stuff, and she wanted to F her boss. I'm very grateful our attempts to have kids failed. It's much easier to make a clean break that way. Not me, but my grandmother once told me that she was considering divorcing her husband of over 50 years. The reason she gave me was, "We stayed together for the kids, and now the kids are all grown up and have lives of their own. And now I can't ignore the small things about him that annoy me." She didn't go through with it, but she seemed sincere when she said it. It broke my heart, especially since I only ever saw the best side of him. My mum left my dad on their 30th wedding anniversary. He had been in and out of rehab 3 times at that point and couldn't commit to quitting drinking. She couldn't stay and watch him drink himself to death anymore. Didn't get divorced, but started the process after about 25 years. Then we stuck it out for a few more years after the kids, and I ended up falling in love with her after the kids moved out. Relationships follow cycles, so I'm glad that I stuck it out. I thought I'd pop in a little bit of sunlight amidst all the divorce, although I guess that's not to say that divorce isn't just objectively the correct decision for some relationships. If there's one thing we're seeing a lot of here, it's often that both parties and the kids would sometimes be better off with the partners no longer together. I'm glad it worked out for this last commenter, though. She cheated for years, plain and simple. Ended our 22-year marriage. To be honest, I don't even want to work through it. Now that we've separated for a while, I realize how toxic she had become, and I'm a much better man without her. My dad had multiple affairs, and my mum got tired of it. There was also the alcoholism and the fact that both parents were workaholics. My dad remarried a lovely woman, and so did my mum. Oh, that might have been an issue too. This lady I work with, her and her husband had been married almost 30 years. They had 2 kids, both in their mid to late teens, and a full life together. She was the stay-at-home mum, and he made the big bucks. Anyways, once the kids both started to grow up and stop wanting to go to the cottage, they realized that when left alone, they didn't have too much in common. Then the kids started leaving for school, and I guess things just got worse. I think everything would have been fine if not for the father's dad, the grandfather, getting sick. Turns out the old man had near $4 million to his name and was giving all of it to the father. So, Dad consults a lawyer who says that since it's an inheritance, if he's divorced before he gets it, he can keep all of it, and as such, he divorces her within days. She stopped working for us shortly after, but I know it was really hard on her. She got her fair shake of the currently owned assets, but couldn't touch the $4 million. I should say that there's no world in which she should deserve the entire sum or anything. Do I think there's grounds that maybe she should get some of it? I don't know. I guess you'd need to know the relationship. What if the grandfather was sick and lived with them for 15 years during his sickness, and as such, she was his primary caregiver? Would that have entitled her to monetary compensation? Again, I don't have the answer, but I don't believe it's ever an easy answer when things like this arise. My parents got divorced because of my dad. We grew up in a military family, and Dad was always deployed. My mum was a walking medical disaster, no offense to her. RA at 23, endometriosis at 24, got a hysterectomy and everything. They married early and had kids really early as well because of the endometriosis. My mum tried to cater to my dad and make sure he could still live his life in his mid-20s because they had kids earlier than expected. Well, being deployed all the time meant that my dad could just F around with ladies off in other places. My mum stayed home and took care of us. Dad got a divorce when he got back and got remarried like 3 months later. That lasted 2 years before she got her green card and then ditched him. My mum still loves him despite him moving on to his third marriage, having another kid, and never actually paying his portion of child support. So pretty much they got divorced so that my dad could have a younger, more subservient wife. Ugh. My grandparents initiated divorce proceedings a month after my dad, the youngest of his siblings, graduated college. They'd stayed together to provide a stable home for their children, and once they'd all left the nest, my grandparents were ready to move on. My grandparents met and married in the 50s. Super Catholic family, 6 kids in 9 years or thereabouts. Husband worked, wife took care of the family dynamic. It was honestly a lot of little things that my grandma eventually got tired of first. First trying to wrangle her 3 boys, all with difficult personalities, to church, so they stopped going. Then it was the things he did like not helping with the difficult kids, which he saw as woman's work, not helping with the household chores, because that's what kids are for, being emotionally distant, he's a man and didn't do emotional stuff, and from the way my grandma tells it, she stuck it out so long because she thought that's what a good Catholic woman did. Be long-suffering and patient. It wasn't until she started exploring outside of Catholicism that she decided she'd suffered long enough. The divorce ended up being civil and mutual. Grandpa was never one for causing a scene, you see, and both of my grandparents ended up in loving, understanding second relationships. Neither of them remarried officially. Funny random side note, when I graduated high school in 2012, my mother invited both my grandparents to the graduation. By that time, they'd been divorced for longer than they'd been married. 20-odd years together and 30 years divorced by my math, and they didn't even recognize each other until after the ceremony. My dad was very vocal that he was staying because of us kids. His dad abandoned my grandma and their kids when he was really little. He had never forgiven his dad and was determined not to do the same thing to his own kids. While I admire him for, quote, doing the right thing, I'm a little resentful because all they ever did was fight, because he couldn't quit screwing around and it was unbearable being around it. My man killed the dog. She was getting older, and if left alone for more than 7 hours, she'd pee in the basement on the cement. I'd check daily and mop if needed, but we were in the process of buying a new house, and he decided she wasn't coming with us. Rather than discussing it with me, he took the easy route and made her disappear while I was at work. Having to console my young sons that evening and seeing her trauma was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. My heart closed to him instantly. My parents were together for 24 years. My dad left my mum after his best friend, who was 6 years younger than him, died. My dad went into a depression about his own life and left my mum for some witch at his work because he felt like he was missing out on life by being with my mum. Probably a little unfair to just slander the person he ended up with, although I guess we're missing a lot of context here. Maybe they cheated, maybe she sends you all personalized hate mail every day, but based on what we have here, we can't just decide that she's a witch. 21 years together with my ex, only married for 16 though. We both had a non-loving home situation, so maybe that drove us together. We bought our first house when we were 3 years together, and since then, there was always the fear of being left alone. Leave the other one and myself in debts. We bought a second home, sold the first one, had kids, lovely twin daughters, and bought a third home. We sold the second one. But my wife still wasn't happy with life, and this all pushed down on me. There was no affection between us. Also, I was very insecure about myself. I thought women didn't really like me. But then my eyes opened, I started doing yoga, went to a therapist, and after a year or two, I felt secure enough to make this really heavy decision. The toughest part was for my daughters, who were 9 back then. I really quickly met someone new, and after her, someone else. So my complexes about my looks were completely gone. I started a new life, my kids are okay with it now. It was the hardest, but also best decision in my life. Also, my ex had it really hard. She didn't see it coming, although she told me several times she wanted to divorce. She blamed me for everything, but now she also has someone new and mutual friends are telling me she's happy. So I think for her, this was a good thing after all. Some couples just grow apart. After 20 years, you're 2 entirely different people. It's hard to stay together. This is the general answer. Yes, people stay together for kids a lot, but overall, this is the root of the answer. People just change over time, which is good. Growth is good, you just need to make sure you're growing together. It's part of a healthy relationship. I think when we talk about relationships, we tend to generalize them and not talk about how much commitment and hard work they are to keep going. But rather, we like to talk about the good side of it, which is why we work so hard. I'm just shy of 25 years with my wife, and while I love her and can't imagine ever being married to another woman, she's driven me crazy enough to think about divorce multiple times. But my commitment to her, those funny vow things, means that that's never really an option. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.